Kindergarten is really more than just learning your ABCs and your colors like it used to be a long time ago.
It's kind of like a house where you have to build a strong foundation to build upon, and kindergarten is that strong foundation. And we try to give them everything we can to make sure that they have the tools and the strategies necessary to build upon as they go up into first and second and third and throughout their learning career. They get a lot in kindergarten. It's not what we used to know kindergarten as, where it was kind of more the social base. This is very academic, but we try to make it as fun in an academic way as we can.
By the end of the kindergarten, they should know how to read. They should have math skills, adding and subtracting fluently within 5, but really should be adding and subtracting up to 10. They're counting to 100 by tens and ones. They are reading CVC words, and the CVC word is a consonant, vowel, consonant, such as cat, sit, leg, things like that.
Every day we work on listening skills, following directions, making sure that they're working together in a group. We do a lot of talking to each other and activities, and let's share our thoughts, and working to make sure that they know that in a group setting it's not just them, that there are other people that they need to think about.
The benefits of full day are the kids get to go to specials such as PE, art, music, library. They also get to go to lunch, which is really fun for the kids because they get to sit with their friends and eat lunch with their friends. Most kids really like that. Also in the afternoon, in the classrooms, we really get to extend their learning in a fun way. So we put them in centers where they're playing games with their peers on things that we learned in the morning.
They know that when they come here that they're going to learn, but it's also going to be a fun environment.
I've been with the school district about 2 years, coming up in April, and I'm the school nutrition coordinator for overseeing the elementary schools and the sites, and we want to feed the children every day. We want them to know that they will always have a meal. They have breakfast, lunch, and snacks at the schools that it pertains to, and that it's always going to be nutritious for them. We follow the My Plate guidelines, and so that they're always getting a meal that will satisfy them and will benefit them in multiple ways. There are several programs that Food and Nutrition does. A few of them are, we really have an investment in wanting to make sure the kids don't go hungry over the summer. So we had 17 sites over last summer that were open to anyone under 18 could come and eat for free, breakfast and lunch daily. And so that's a service that we like to provide to make sure that kids know that they can have food even when school's out, that they have that safety net of being able to get fed.
I'm Jan Kalesa. I've been at Copperwood for 15 years. I started out as a cashier because I wanted to be on my boys' schedule, and I did that for 2.5 years, and then the rest I've been manager here. I'm responsible for ordering the food. I supervise 5 employees underneath me, and we love it here. This is my second home. We serve breakfast from 7:30 to around 7:50, 7:55. And then when breakfast is done, we just start going right into making our lunch, panning it up and planning it out, and setting up our fruit and veggie bar. We started with the fruit and veggie bar, where every child has to have a half a cup of fruit or vegetable, and that was met with resistance. Parents, why are you making my child do this? And I said, well, you know, we are at a school, we're here to educate them, so we're teaching them that fruits and vegetables are healthy for them. And they get to try things they might not have at home, and they don't have to eat it, but I think when they're sitting down and still maybe hungry, they'll start trying different things, and we can get them to eat a little healthier. I live in this neighborhood, and these are my neighbors, this is my community, and seeing the children come in and happy and smiling and excited and telling me that this is the best meal ever, and knowing that I get to feed them and it's a great meal for them and it's choices they like, and I'm not paying for the meal. You know, I get paid to do it, but it's not even about that. It's just seeing them smile and knowing they've been taken care of and they're happy to come in here, and it's very rewarding.
Was super apprehensive when he started in kindergarten. He had a little bit of a difficult time adjusting in preschool to separation with me, and I was really nervous, but within the first couple of days he fell into a good routine and didn't even want me to walk him to class anymore. So he was instantly enamored by the whole concept of Sunset Heights and kindergarten and the freedom that that allowed him, and it's been really good for him. I thought that he might not be ready for a full day in kindergarten, but quickly after starting the year, I realized that it was exactly what he needed for growth, and he's done remarkably well. My husband and I have been amazed at how much he's changed, even in just his personality, his behavior at home, his willingness to try things and to put himself out there has, I mean, just exponentially grown over this, you know, the 5 months he's been in school. His math skills have really improved. His teacher really has focused on that with him because he's doing so well with reading and other areas. So what I like best about it is that she, you know, individualized his educational experience for kindergarten. What I appreciate most is the level of communication between the teachers and myself. I want to be involved, but I wanted to give Cole the space he needed to kind of grow and do this a little bit on his own, to navigate it on his own. And we found a good balance with that. And I always want to know what's going on, and they're amazing about the, you know, the weekly newsletters and sending home information, and she's available anytime I need to go in and talk to her about him. Every day has a new experience, whether it's academically or socially, and socially has been really good for him. He's made lots of friends. He has girlfriends and boyfriends and all sorts of different relationships, and it's been exciting for us to watch that and hear about that every day.
When everyone stands, that's when you come here and wait for her to look at you and nod, and then you just say.
Well, I couldn't be more pleased with Peoria Unified School District. They've met every need that my husband and I had for our son, and I wouldn't put him anywhere else. I can't say enough about it. I really can't. And there's not one part of it for me that has been a negative for kindergarten for Cole at all.
I'm a sophomore.
It's just been awesome.
Okay. So she'll say, oh, I just spelled that wrong. Amazing. So she'll say a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Sailor Fleming at this high school. So then once she does that, then you just quietly stand here and read, and then she'll awesome. Okay.
The Founding Fathers risked everything for the sake of their liberty and the liberty for future generations to come. Though we may remember the historical past events for their immense passion and patriotism, we must not forget the same acts presented in the modern era.
Liberty has given you and your country more power than any weapon or human could ever offer. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why the land of stars and stripes is such an incredible country.
The hope, the pride, and the triumph of the American people reverberate throughout the history books. And in every one of those books, one name that rings like a bell is Thomas Jefferson, the precipice of patriotism.
The fiery words of the allegiance cultivates patriotism and produces an eternal thirst for liberty and freedom. So let us join hands together in teaching all children the true meaning of the pledge.
We should not take our freedom for granted. We must cherish our freedom because it could be gone in an instant. We all must keep this valuable ability dear and close to our heart because we never know when enemies could attack at any time and take this wonderful ability away from us.
How do you follow your responsibilities as an American citizen, I ask? Voting in a presidential election, obeying laws, and paying your taxes are all important responsibilities that citizens have to their country.
You see, it's my civic duty to attend school since it's a law. However, it is my civic responsibility to do my absolute best while in school. This way, I can later use what I've learned to contribute to society and to benefit my community. My family immigrated to America because of the beautiful and bold American dream. This dream is a living representation that we need to dream big and have courage. Given our equal rights, we all have a chance to change the world. America welcomes all, and everyone is given the rights that every single human being deserves.
America is the land of the free, the home of the brave, and above all, this land is home to so many immigrants. Why should we deny them the chance to have a part in this, to have their names etched in American history? I was given that chance, you were given that same chance. We shouldn't let a place of birth or a language divide us.
Let your culture be one of the millions of threads that is woven into the tapestry that is our country. Imagine how much greater this nation can become, given the chance to incorporate your cultures, values, and belief systems into the American melting pot.
If we're not for President Obama, we would not have fulfilled the dream of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. of living in a nation where his 4 little children won't be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I ask you now to continue that dream. Be judged by the content of your character. Can you use your actions to offer hope for our future?
And some people are probably thinking to themselves, oh, she's just an 11-year-old. She doesn't know what patriotism means. To have patriotism within you doesn't mean that you have to be a certain age. What matters is what you truly support and believe in this country. And yes, you better believe it, I am a proud patriot. Now let me ask you one more thing before you let me go. Are you a true patriot? Thank you for your time.
Call the meeting to order. I'd like to start with the moment of silence and a pledge of allegiance. We have a volunteer today, Sailor Fleming, a sophomore at Cactus High School. If you could all please rise for the moment of silence and pledge of allegiance.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and I just want to thank everybody for coming this evening. Number 4 is staff recognitions, and this will be presented by Ms. Aries. Welcome.
Good evening, President Pingarelli, members of the board, Dr. Stifler. Well, tonight we are recognizing a phenomenal program, and we're actually quite overdue in recognizing this program and sharing a little bit more about them with you this evening. Cactus High School is home to the Adult Transition Center, otherwise known as the ATC. It currently includes 45 students. Their ages 18 to 22 years, and the Adult Transition Center was established in 2003. It serves to empower young adults with disabilities to attain the highest level of independence possible in activities of daily living, community participation, and employment. This includes employment opportunities even within our own district, which we always encourage. The empowerment I just mentioned is achieved by providing focused instructional programming, community-based experiences, and facilitating collaboration with other agencies. While I described just a few of their accomplishments, these students have some other things to share with you, and I know we have some photos we're going to show here when we get a moment up on the screen so you can see a little bit of their work. The ATC has formed more than 75 partnerships with district and community sites, which provide a variety of real-life experiences for these students. These include things like site tours, volunteerism, and paid work experience. They even practice different types of adult living skills and explore recreation and leisure pursuits. To allow extended opportunities to learn and practice these employability skills, the ATC developed and manages 2 student-run businesses, and you got to see a little bit about one of them here this evening. I'm not sure if any of you had an opportunity to enjoy an iced tea or a cup of coffee prior to our meeting, but they do sell through their Determined Cafe, and the cafe prepares and delivers morning beverages. It's always a real treat when they come over here to the district office, and we have an opportunity to visit with them and purchase some of their coffee and iced tea as well. They also have a print hub, and the students format and print full color or black and white posters, signs, and banners, and I know they brought a few of them to show off for you this evening as well. The ATC is committed to engaging in concerned post-secondary planning with families and adult agencies, including the Division of Developmental and Vocational Rehabilitation. This year, the ATC implemented facilitated transition conferences, which brought family, school, and outside adult agency representatives to the table to talk specifically about their post-secondary goals for each and every student. Oh, I hope you, like I said, had an opportunity not only to enjoy the cafe, but as a little memento for all of you board members, you'll see right in front of you on the dais where the students actually created a gift for you. You'll see those mugs that they personalized with your name, and also I believe it has our vision on the back of it too. So if one of you, maybe President Pingarelli, could hold that up, or you could all hold that up to show it off, and we'll be sure to get a picture of you with those as well. But I know they were quite proud to be able to provide that to you this evening. Well, we're really pleased to present these phenomenal students to you tonight, and they are under the instruction of a few incredible teachers. We have a couple of them here with us tonight. Leading the program, Christopher Morris, Special Education and ATC lead teacher. I'll have him stand to be recognized. Oh, you're back there. Very good. Thank you for all you do. And Jean Robertson with our Move On program here this evening as well. And our wonderful students, when you hear me call your name, would you stand up so we could recognize you as well? We've got Steve Rasmussen. Wonderful. Elise Arrow. Alex Yoder. Anthony Turnek. Joey Arsenault. And Andrew Panakia. Students, you really do wonderful work and do serve some delicious iced tea and coffee. It's wonderful. Thank you. Board members, it's my pleasure to reintroduce to you Mr. Morris. I know you may have some comments or questions he can answer on behalf of the program, so I'll invite him up here before you. Mr. Morris.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's great to have you. I'll start with comments and questions from Mr. Sandoval. Would you like to start?
Sure, thank you. First off, thank you for the great gift. That's fantastic. I've never had my name on a coffee mug, so I feel really cool right now. So I appreciate it. And thank you, sir, for all that you do to certainly inspire, these students. It's hard enough, transitioning from school into career, and to add the additional dynamics. Really appreciate what you do every day. So thank you, and thank you all for what you do and your hard work. And looking forward to your success as you move forward. Thank you.
Mrs. Doan?
Well, I had the privilege of visiting some of these a couple of years ago, and I would like to know, have there been any recent changes in this wonderful program?
Yes, this is the first year that we have 3 different levels of programs based on facility level. And so this is the first year going around, and each individual program is on their own schedule. They have set their own activities, and it's really, I think it's flowed way better than previous years, being able to take those if it's a small group supported employment activity, those kids to the point where we have some kids are doing a little bit of independent work. So yeah, there has been quite a bit of change.
Well, this is very excellent, and I really enjoyed visiting, and I'm gonna have to visit again. It's a very, I believe, a very worthwhile program, and give these young people a good idea of how to get along in work and those things, and I'm very pleased, and I think the cup is beautiful. I really like that font. That's a nice font. I like that. Thank you, guys. You do excellent work. You do excellent work. And
thank you.
Mrs. Connect?
Well, I offer my thanks as well. The coffee is delicious. Thank you very much. I'm looking at these photos, and what great experiences you all get to have. Have you all had an opportunity to work with the horses and the cats? That is really, really cool. What a tremendous opportunity. And thank you very much for facilitating and making that happen. I'm proud that we can have that at Cactus High School.
Thank you.
Mrs. Ceja Martinez?
Thank you again. And I will second that, my first mug with my name on it, so that's exciting. The first thing I see is your pride, your happiness, and your passion is a direct reflection of what you instill in our students, and that's phenomenal and priceless, so thank you so much. My question to all of you is, I see a lot of events too. What's your favorite one out of the whole year this year?
Alex, what do you think?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Also like to recognize we have one of our other teachers here, Miss Lindsay Swingle. She's our Step Up teacher.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you all for coming. I've been on the board for 2 years, and this is the first time, and I really look forward to having you guys back. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you for the mug and the iced tea. It's great.
Thank you so much. I'm just so guys coming for like these mugs. We made them by ourselves.
Well, I appreciate. And you're Steve, right, Steve?
No, Steve N.
Steve N. I am so sorry. I'm sorry I didn't get that correct. Well, it's so nice to meet all of you, and thank you for the iced tea. But I did want to ask one question of the teacher. Yeah, yes, Mr. Morris. I guess what have you gotten out of this?
You know, what I enjoy the most is their determination to be a part of the community, their determination to be an employee, their determination just to make relationships with people in and outside of the school. So that's been the most fun of just watching that. And I've been lucky. Some of the kids I have taught at Ironwood, so I knew them when they were 14 and 15, and now that they're in their early 20s, kind of seeing that transformation. So that's been pretty amazing to watch.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes. And Ms. Aries, would you like to, I guess we would like some photos. Is that correct? We always take photos. So if you guys, Ms. Aries will let you know to come up here at the front. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm very sorry.
Oh, you can come up here and say it. That's perfect.
Yeah, go where everybody's going to see you.
Here. Yep.
I
Hi.
have a word example for Stephen. Stephen 4.
Uh-huh. Nice. Well, what an honor, Mr. Savoy.
So,
Yes.
Mrs. Pingarelli, I have a question. So, are the services that the students provide, are they available for outside purchase?
Yes. Posters and awards. And also, we're always looking for anybody who owns a business that would like an internship.
Thank you. Very good.
Okay, everybody move back.
One, two, three. That's great. Thank you so much. Let's get one of our board Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Morris and students. Thank you. And governing board members, President Pingarelli, if
Yes.
you don't mind, if we could get a photo of all the board members, just hold up your mugs right
Sure.
in your seat, and we'd like to get a quick photo of
Do you
that.
want at the seat or stand up or?
Hold it up. It looks good like that. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, next item. Is board recognitions. I will start with Mrs. Connect.
Okay, I won't take up much time today. I just wanted to say that I had the privilege of attending the ASBA Equity event and covered quite a few different topics. I think the most intriguing to me was that one on adverse childhood experiences and how they affect our students in the classroom. And so I look forward to bringing back some of that information and sharing it with my fellow board members. Also, the Arts Festival was on Saturday the 1st. Amazing, gorgeous weather. I'm sure that maybe Mrs. Airy can tell us how many people we had there.
President Pingarelli, Mrs. Connect, we had a record this year. 16,000 people attend that event.
Amazing. And so many of our students had an opportunity to show their skills and talent. It was really a wonderful thing. A little sad for me. I didn't have anybody showing photography or visual art or dancing this year, but it was really a joyful experience to see that. And then finally, the Peoria Education Foundation, which, as I think you all know, is a nonprofit auxiliary really to the school district that helps raise funds for student scholarships and teacher grants. That was this week, earlier this week. Boy, everything seems to be a blur at this point. But I bet, Mrs. Zeri, I don't know any details, but very successful event, yes?
President Pingarelli, Mrs. Connect, it was hugely successful. We had about 300 guests in attendance and raised more than $65,000 to go right back to students and teachers in the district.
That's right. That's an all-volunteer board, and so nobody gets paid for doing that work. All that money goes back into the pockets of our students and our teachers. So great work from our PR department for the help on all of those events, as always, and very grateful, and congratulations.
Mrs. Ceja Martinez?
Yes, I'll start off with the Arts Festival. Definitely thank you, PR, for showcasing our story. The parents I saw on Facebook, all the kids' pictures, priceless. It is a true testament also of our city, our district, and our community that we really cherish the arts program, and my hope is that we continue that momentum and so we can support our students so they can experience what the arts is all about. I was quite a busy past few weeks. Just a quick shout out to Councilmember Michael Finn, who took time out of his busy day to speak to our student government at Centennial High School. Councilmember Ray Melnar as well went to Ironwood High School. It was an impromptu for our K-12 administrator, Linda Pallas-Thompson, who joined us. I appreciate that. We talked about servant leadership to our students and the fact that our council members showed up and were there in a heartbeat, sharing their stories, really relate to our student government. So hopefully that we have those future leaders join us. Professor at Glendale Community College, Heather Merrill, invited myself and Jan Ogino, a teacher here, to speak to future teachers. That was quite exciting, so thank you. Sunrise Mountain Fashion Show, Mrs. Mary Pores and their students, not only did they show their fashion show, but they collected clothes to donate for women in our community. So hats off to them for not only sharing their passion, but giving back to the community. And that's just another testament of our students that care so much. But my highlight was attending the first annual Altaloma Community Carnival, and it was a home run. So hats off to the community, the staff, the PTSO, the administration for throwing a phenomenal annual carnival, and I hope that that community continues to support them, and it's just another way we show what Peoria's culture is. So thank you, and home run for them.
Mrs. Doan?
Anything this week?
Well,
So, yes, agreed. It's been very busy over the last few weeks. I did have the opportunity to attend the equity conference that Kathy spoke of. And I appreciate the opportunity to attend. You know, it just makes us certainly more knowledgeable and smarter, you know, in our role as your board to ensure that we're always, you know, taking a very informed and certainly holistic approach to everything that we do and all the decisions that we make. I attended the foundation dinner, you know, enjoyed the student stories, you know, the appreciation that they had for the efforts of that organization, you know, providing, you know, the opportunity for them to attend, you know, college as a result of the scholarships that are certainly afforded through that program. The arts and festival was fantastic. My wife, who is a graduate of Cactus High School back in 1987, I'm glad she's not here, otherwise she'd be a little upset that I'm dating her a little bit, but I do realize it is being recorded, so hopefully she exactly. So, but the highlight of that event, a couple, I mean, it was twofold for me. There's no doubt, I mean, our arts, education, music programs are top notch, and what that does to certainly nurture their creativity, our students, is invaluable, as they further their careers through education and then get on to college career in life. But the other highlight was there was a Cactus Cobra branded, I guess really designed guitar that my wife was able to walk away with, so she was pleased about that. Lastly, just this week, actually, I was able to attend the Centennial High School. They inducted 100-plus students into their National Honor Society program. It was certainly, again, inspiring, to see all those students who are committed to scholarship, certainly committed to service, and committed to really, having a very team work environment, as they go through, their career within that program. I think for me, what I also saw is, and so I want to certainly give a plug to Principal Lopez-Lira. When you take a look at the environment and the community that attended that event, you can clearly see that it is a community. You can clearly see that the environment that she establishes on that campus is one that is very inspiring, one that certainly promotes creativity within her staff, and she really does a great job at ensuring that her teachers, her staff, are aware that they are in a very safe and supportive environment within that campus. So hats off to them. Thank you.
Anything at this time? Yes. Excuse me for interrupting. I forgot something very important. I forgot to acknowledge the efforts of Robert Panzer, our arts director at the Arts Festival. He probably won't be happy that I'll say this, but he said the first day he lost 5 pounds just running around getting everything set up. And I said, well, I'll volunteer for that next year. So, but he did an amazing job. We're very, very, very grateful for his efforts.
Mrs. Connect.
Can I
Yes.
jump in with
Sure.
3 quick things? Just this week, 3 great things notified. Country Meadows Elementary School was just recognized again as a national showcase school for capturing kids' hearts. I believe that happened yesterday. I believe it happened yesterday that 2 of our schools were awarded the super extra very coveted A+ award. Okay? And so Marshall Ranch for the 2nd time and Santa Fe for the 3rd time.
Hey.
Well, thank you for that, Dr. Stifler. Next item is item 6, request to address the governing board regarding matters not included on the agenda. We have one speaker. It is Adam Schreier, or Schreier. Schreier, sorry.
President Pangarelli, Superintendent Stifler, and the board. My name is Adam Schreier. I'm from Cactus High School. I'm here basically just to say thank you to all of you. We are, as you may or may not know, we are headed to the World Championships for robotics next week, and that wouldn't have happened without your guys' support. So, and then kudos goes to the school admin, Mrs. Hammer, Mr. Seraphin, all of them, everybody. That's pretty much it. I just wanted to come and say thank you to all of you. I had brought some of my students here that are going to be attending with us. We're going up against 300 other teams from across the world, and looking at the other teams, we have a pretty good shot to bring home a title. So we're optimistic. So we're headed to Houston later next week.
Well, best of luck. And thank you for coming tonight. Next item is item number 7, address agenda and consider adoption or recommended changes. Mrs. Doan, do you have any changes? Mr. Sandoval?
Not.
Next? Does it say how Martinez? Okay. And we'll move on to item number 8. Item number 8 is presentation and consideration of recommendations of the School Boundary Committee for elementary and high school boundary adjustments. And this is presented by Mr. Savoy.
Hi, good
And-
evening.
And may I interrupt you just for one moment? I just wanted, for anybody, I know we have some people who want to speak, and a lot of people are here for this. I just wanted to kind of clarify, we're happy to have your presentation, and then we have public comments, followed by board discussion. So I just wanted to let everybody know that. I'm sorry, Mr. Savoy, go ahead. Thank you.
No, thank you, President Pangarelli, members of the board, Dr. Stifler. I was hoping to catch Mr. Schroyer before he left. He's an awfully humble man because he's really a terrific coach of those young people at Cactus High School, and I'm sure they're going to do well. So, but he got out before we could say that. It's really a pleasure to be here this evening. As you may recall, members of the board, back in October, we were tasked with impaneling a committee of our citizens to study enrollment and projections for growth in the northwest sector of our district. And at the time when the governing board asked us to put that committee together, there were really two things we were going to study. Either we'd be looking at boundaries for a new school based on the outcome of our bond election in November, or we'd be looking at boundaries to accommodate the growth until we had another opportunity to ask our voters. And so we've been working on that, and tonight we're bringing to you our work, our effort, and a recommendation. First, I'd like to begin and take really a brief moment to do this, but I do think it's important. We had a committee of parents that attend the schools that are being impacted. So the committee is representative of the schools that we were discussing, and there were 8 schools that we were discussing, and we had 16 parent members. A lot of them here this evening. I'm quickly going to do a roll call. When I call your name, if you please stand. Nicole Friedel, Vicky Zalewski, Eleanor Pace, Sarah Moot, Jennifer Kirchbaum, Melissa Briggs, Jackie Hayes, Joe Heron, Stephanie Wilson, Julie Garrettson, Jean Laredo, Amy Franklin, Jessica Jones, Stacy Sheehy, Danielle Wiley, and Jerry Lombardi. I'd like to give these folks a round of applause. Up tonight. Appreciate it. But they really put in a lot of time, and I wanted to publicly acknowledge them. Also, you can see it was a team effort as well, with Mrs. Davey, Miss Airy was a contributor, Miss Bridgewater, and my right-hand person here, Mr. Terrell Harris, who did a tremendous amount of work for us. And also in the audience this evening is a number of our school administrators of those schools, and I want to thank them for being here, both our principals and assistant principals. I've already pretty much shared the objectives of our committee, and the idea is to bring to you a recommendation from our committee on proposed new boundary alignment. And I put in parentheses 3 to 4 years because, as we've shared with our community in both public meetings and we've shared with our committee as well, we know there's more work to do. We have growth in the northwest sector, and we believe that the board will ask in 3 to 4 years for a committee to convene and study once again our boundary alignment, whether it's to have children be prepared to attend a new school or to adjust and do what we can to accommodate our students at our schools. Interestingly enough, I will just add as a brief aside that in 12 years in serving in K-12 academic services, I've had the pleasure of facilitating committees on boundary alignment, and interestingly, about every 4 years, I've been here before the board working with a committee. So this is our third time. In fact, a few of the people tonight have been with me on a couple of these projects. This is important, and I think it's something that the Peoria Unified School District stands on as a fundamental rock, really, if you will, of our operational practice, and that is to be transparent and involve as many folks as we can in a process that has such heavy implication for families and students and schools, the staff at many of these schools and the administrative teams. And so to that end, when we identified the schools that potentially could be impacted, we asked our principals, could you please identify a couple of active members from within your community that have knowledge and might be of interest to give of their time to serve on a committee. We met 7 times. which is really quite remarkable. As I look at past processes or past committee work, this aligns right along the same path, the same amount of time. But 7 meetings, initially you're getting to know each other, you're kind of laying out the groundwork, what is the question that we have at hand, and then you dig in and you begin to really begin the evaluation and the analysis. We made a proposal, we put a proposal together, we met with the community on March 28th at Sunrise Mountain High School. We had a large attendance that evening, and we listened to the feedback. We gave a brief presentation, and then members from the community approached. We had 2 microphones set up. They could come and share their comments. And we listened, and many of our committee members were there. I also want to thank you. I know that many of our board members were in attendance, and I also know there were a couple that were watching the streaming live at home. And so that kept you informed as well. We met the next day, March 29th, with our committee. And the first thing we said is, what did you hear last night? What were the themes that came across? And our committee took that work very, very seriously. In fact, one of our committee members spent the entire day trying to draw a map that she could present to the committee that answered many of the questions that were presented by our community. And that began our new jumping off point on our new work. And we worked on that March 29th. We met again on April 3rd, and we came back with new proposals to the community at Liberty High School on April 4th, a week later. The crowd, not quite as large as our first meeting, but yet the same opportunity was available for input from our community. Some of the things that we heard was that we did answer some of the questions, but there were still some questions that community members had. We met again the very next day. The committee reconvened at Liberty High School in the library where we had met the previous 6 times. This was our 7th meeting together, and we addressed what we heard the night before on April 4th. The committee, after much deliberation, further analysis, we put Mr. Harris through the paces with having, put up different scenarios. Remained with the recommendation that we had presented the night before, April 4th. So we heard the feedback and the input. The committee said, Steve, Allie, Terrell, this is our recommendation to the governing board. And so that's what we bring to you tonight. That recommendation is, I have some maps for you in a minute that we'll look at, but there are some boundary changes for our elementary schools. I will tell you that from the March 28th meeting into our presentation tonight, our impact changed. Initially, there was an impact on 1,334 students. With the new proposal that we're presenting tonight, that new number is 746. So it does not answer all the questions, but we were able to reduce the impact by half on students. Also, the committee, we labored over this numerous times at numerous meetings. And the question is, when you change a student's elementary boundary, should then the student attend the high school that elementary school currently attends as of today? Or should we just leave the high school boundaries alone? You make the elementary change, but the high school boundary, the children would still attend the high school that is currently assigned. The committee, over deliberation of several of our committee meetings, consistently recommended that if you change a student's elementary assignment, then that they should go to that high school assignment that it's aligned to. So the committee did let rest there. They had 2 other additional recommendations. This number 3 recommendation came up at our last committee meeting on April 5th. And I think it was from some of our committee members, as well as some input we heard from the community, was if we could find a future site for the traditional school to allow room to increase enrollment. Because right now, the traditional school is on the campus with Coyote Hills, and they share that one physical facility. And the last recommendation is that the board please consider and recommend that a bond election be called for elementary and high school space. Those were the 4 recommendations from the committee. And then if I could take just a moment with the board to share just a couple of other things. One of the things that we share with our community at both meetings, and I know the board has heard this prior at an update opportunity that I had, but there are certain transition recommendations that we would like to continue to help support families. For instance, if a student is a current 7th grader this year and they would have an assignment to an elementary school, their neighborhood, that we would allow that 7th grader to stay as an 8th grader so that they could finish their elementary career with the children that they've been doing that for the last few years. Also, if that student who's going to be an 8th grader has a brother or sister that's in the 3rd or 5th grade, so to reduce some family things with, some children at one school and some at another, that we would allow the younger brother and sister to stay while the 8th grade student completes their term at that school. We've worked with Mr. King in transportation and his team and are suggesting that transportation be provided for those children for 1 year, so that if there's a new assignment to a different school, but we're going to let them stay as an 8th grader, that we would give them a bus ride if they met that criteria. We have identified that special education students, any student with an IEP that would be impacted in a realignment, the IEP goals as written for Sunset Heights or at Zuni Hills could be met at the other elementary schools involved. And that we would not reassign any high school student who's currently attending high school or who's an 8th grader this year. They would stay on track for their 9th grade attendance at high school. Communication is critical, and in keeping our families informed throughout this process, Mrs. Airy and her team have consistently maintained a public website for community members to access. Every time we completed a meeting, all of those materials were posted and available for public, and anything that we were bringing to the community meetings was also posted in public ahead of those meetings. And based on a recommendation tonight and board decision, we're prepared to begin communication this evening out to those communities to keep them informed. The other thing I'll just add briefly that we heard from many community members was, if we change the boundary, what plans would we have in place to help support those children in that transition? We would work with our principals. We've done this in the past, where we would set up, I refer to it as an ambassadorship program, but we could get creative with that. We would work with our school sites, we'd work with our public relations department, and we would set up opportunities for those students to become familiar with their new school assignment that would take place next year. And we'd also involve parents and family with an opportunity to visit the campus, tour the campus, meet the teachers that are on that campus. So a lot of those things would come into play and be in place based on the outcome of this evening. And as I finish up, a couple of things. This map here, well, first of all, I did provide each board member prior to the start of this meeting the third map that I'm going to show on the PowerPoint that has the current boundary situation and what the committee's proposal is. But what I wanted to share, what's important about this slide for our board members and our community, is that you will see we project out through 3 years. And this is based on the students who currently live there, and also taking into effect in the process the building that we're seeing with the developers, and we know what that looks like. We work with the city, and we understand how many building permits are being sold or processed, and when those homes will begin being constructed. We've also factored in students who move from one school to another. And as you see on this, if we do nothing at all, Sunset Heights and Zuni Hills will far exceed their capacity. And that's what we shared with our committee. This is how we began our committee work. What happened through that work is we looked at a variety of scenarios with our committee, but here is the proposed one that we're sharing with you tonight. And you can see that with these realignments, we can, in effect, maintain capacity at our schools to support our students living in this area, accounting for the new growth that's coming online out for the next 3 years. But we're pushing the max at a number of our schools. In fact, if you look at Zuni Hills in 18-19, they're over by 2%, even with making the adjustments that we're recommending. what we're counting on is Zuni Hills is a school that is a little bit transient, and primarily because the traditional school used to be there, so a lot of those students that lived in the neighborhood moved to the traditional school at Coyote Hills. And so we believe that even though that shows a slight over 100%, that based on that the students seeking to attend other schools in our district, that it will be just below that, and we feel pretty confident about that. And then lastly is the comparison of the two slides. And I will run through this quickly just to orientate you, because one of the things that's hard about this is it's difficult to see all of the roads and to become orientated on that. The number 6 in the yellow in the center, that's Sunset Heights. So number 6, the yellow zone is Sunset Heights. Turn this a little bit so I can see it clearly myself. Right above the number 6 is Deer Valley Road, so that might help you just as far as putting your finger there or writing DV, just so you can find a road that you can orientate from. And the red line next to the 6, that's 95th Avenue. So if you go down to the other side of that box, that straight line that runs all the way up into the next, that's 91st Avenue. So I'm at least trying to get you pinpointed on the map with Deer Valley Road, 91st Avenue, and then you can see Lake Pleasant Parkway. It's labeled up on the top of the map in the white area, but if you follow that line down, that's the Lake Pleasant Parkway. And then you can also see the 303. So I just wanted to spend a minute to do that. And then what I'd like to do, with your indulgence, I'm going to walk through very quickly, but just to show you and point out the primary adjustments. Would that be okay with that, President Pangarelli? Okay. So if you look at the blue area, the number 3, the frontier boundary stays the same as it is currently, although we did add an area. If you see the blue area that's outlined in the red, that's east of Lake Pleasant Parkway and it's west of 91st and north of Calileos. We're adding that area is being added to Frontier. Currently attends Zuni Hills, but would be reassigned to Frontier Elementary.
You don't have a little pointy thing on your thing?
That's a good question. Can I use my cursor, or that's not?
Oh yeah, there you go.
I
So
don't
what
know
are we
if that'll
talking
work
about?
that really that well. But I'm talking about this blue area right here where the cursor is.
Mhm.
That's going to move from Zuni and now will be assigned to Frontier Elementary.
So,
Okay?
yeah, right.
Then, if you look right below that blue, there's a little yellow section that's outlined in red. That's just south of Calileos, north of Pinnacle Peak. That area would now go to Sunset Heights, which currently attends Zuni Hills. Now, the number of the students that I just talked in those two areas, the blue that I started with is 23, and the yellow area that's going to Sunset would be 60. Okay, I want you to drop straight down, and you see the light blue box in the red area, outlined in red. It's a perfect square. We refer to that area as Dove Valley, although Dove Valley is much larger than that. But that square, Dove Valley, currently attends Sunset Heights, and they would be reassigned to Coyote Hills. So that's we call the Dove Valley neighborhood and Coyote Hills. If you come all the way down to this very far tip, way down here, it's in the purple. That area there is called Avenue of the Arts. This was an area that we had changed their alignment to Apache. At the March 28th meeting, we did hear from that community that they had been moved a number of times and asked to stay at Park Ridge. We were able to accommodate that.
Can you show me again, please?
It's this area right down, it's the deep purple.
Got it, thank you.
And it's way down there. The other thing I should point out, see this little area in the light blue that's below the red? Right here? This little area right here, Coyote Hills. You with me? We were going to move that to Park Ridge, but also from the March 28th meeting, we did keep them at Coyote Hills, so there's no move there. That's how we reduced the impact on students from 1350 down to 700. Okay, this area right here has yellow and green next to it. Right there. So originally, this entire area currently attends Sunset Heights. When we were in our first proposal on March 28th, had that entire area going to Park Ridge. And we adjusted, and the dividing line there is Williams. Well, I take that, yeah, Williams. So actually, Casa del Rey is the yellow section. That's east of 105th Avenue. They will stay at Sunset Heights. And then the two little rectangles to the left that are green, originally they were at Zuni Hills. They were at Sunset. They're going to be now moved to Zuni Hills. That's the Alta Vista neighborhood. And then lastly is the area of Tierra del Rio, which is up in this section here. It's the blue right there. It's the pink and the pink, kind of like the purple pink and then the pink above it. Those areas currently attend Zuni Hills. The committee's recommendation is that those students would now be reassigned to Lake Pleasant. That's the blue. The light pink would go to Vistancia, and the deep pink would go to Park Ridge. So I know that's a lot, and orientating to the map, I feel comfortable with it, but I've also had the pleasure of doing this for 3 months. I work with Mr. Harris, who has all kinds of things, and we look at it. I can tell you that our committee knows it very, very well, and I believe that many of our community members know it pretty well from attending either the community meetings or our committee meetings. It was interesting. We had probably 20, sometimes 25 folks that came to our committee meetings and watched the committee work, which was great. So I will stop there, and President Pangarelli will follow your lead on how you'd like to proceed further.
Can I just ask one more? I appreciate the landmarks. They really do help us because we get the emails and they're not part of the map, and so it's helpful to see the areas that are being referenced. Another one that was more of an issue on the May 28th, or excuse me, the March 28th meeting was the Meadows, and where is the Meadows?
Okay. President Pangarelli, Board Member Connect, that's a good question because that was part of, so this yellow section, trying to get the cursor there. So it's the yellow, it's above the 6 and a little bit to the right. So the Meadows sits above the light blue square that's in all the red. See the light blue square that's completely circled with red? Right above that is the yellow. And now the Meadows includes everything on the north side of Deer Valley. So the entire yellow area on the north side of Deer Valley is right above the number 6. That entire area is called the Meadows. But I think what Mrs. Connect's referring to, because we've had a lot of questions from that area, is east of Liberty High School, and 95th Avenue, west of 95th Avenue, is an area of the Meadows where there's currently 2 developments going on. One is Meritage, and the other is Maracay. Meritage is about 100% built out. Families are living there, pretty much done. Maracay has come online this year. They've been building a number of houses. They still have lots of lots to sell, but that is very active. And then there's a section just above, but doesn't go into that next red line, that is planned, but there is no construction there yet. So that's the area that when our committee's been working, we call that the Meadows. But it's one section. So if you look west of Liberty High School, if you've driven out in that area, you see a lot of Hovanian is a builder in that area. Those homes are to the west. They are going to Sunset now, and they would continue to go to Sunset. So the newer area is the Meadows.
Okay, Mrs. Pingarelli, can I ask Mr. Savoy one more thing? Could you pinpoint with your cursor exactly where the two high schools in question are?
Yes. Right above the number 6 in the yellow, on the other side of Deer Valley Road, probably right above where the 6 is Liberty High School. That's where Liberty High School sits. And then if you see the 2, a little bit to the right of that, I would say really between the 2 and the 3, but in the 2 zone, that's where Sunrise Mountain High School is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Savoy, what I would like to do is, at this point, before the board starts to ask questions of you and your team, is to listen to the public, and after we have a few, and then we will come back and ask you and your team questions.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
The first person to speak tonight, and I just wanted to remind everybody that we have a 3-minute timer. That's our rules. So each speaker will have a 3-minute timer. Our clerk, Mrs. Sehar Martinez, will start it when the speaker starts to speak. The first speaker is Julie Gerritsen. Thank you for coming.
Good evening, President Pingarelli, our board members, and Dr. Stifler. My name is Julie Gerritsen. This is the 3rd committee of this type that I have served on. This one last year was exclusive to Sunset Heights, and then 5 years ago, I was on the committee that created Sunset Heights, redid the boundaries to create that to alleviate the overcrowding at Park Ridge. This process doesn't get any easier, even though this is the 3rd time I've been through this. We, as a committee, we work really hard, and we took this job very seriously. We looked at many maps over the course of the 7 committee meetings we had, many numbers, looked at different scenarios. It's just, we did the best that we could with what we were given. Not everyone's going to be happy. We realize that. It would be great if everyone could, that we could please everyone, but with all of the growth and continued growth that we will experience up there, I have a student at Liberty and at Sunset Heights, so it's going to be continuing for quite a while up there. Mr. Savoy likes to remind us, as long as you see barren land, we will continue to have these boundary changes in the future, unfortunately. So I just want to impress upon you that this is not something that we took lightly at all. We are very concerned about the changes that are being made, the families, the students that will be impacted. I guess that's it. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Jennifer Kirschbaum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pingarelli. Board members, thank you for having us tonight. I really just want to touch a little bit on what Julie said. I think she said it very well, and I think Mr. Savoy presented this as well as possible. One thing to keep in mind, too, is we really did try to move around the areas of higher growth. So some of the numbers that you see in that 740 students that are being impacted aren't even there yet. So it is homes that are being built, it's numbers that's being projected. So please keep that in mind, that it's not 740 students next year that's going to be affected. It is over the next 3 years. And just like Julie said, unfortunately, we can't make everyone happy. Unfortunately, this isn't going to be ideal for all the parents and the students, but it is a sad reality that something needs to happen with these schools and with these boundaries so that every child does have a seat and every child does have a fair opportunity to learn in an environment that is not overcrowded and takes less attention away from these students. So Julie said it, Mr. Savoy has said it, we did work very, very hard on this. We took everything into consideration that we possibly could, and we just, again, want to impress upon you that we know this isn't ideal, but unfortunately it is a reality that does need to happen. So, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brandon Price.
Good evening. I'm a resident in the Tierra del Rio neighborhood, and currently my kids, both my two little girls, attend Zuni Hills Elementary. Would you call the 7th closest Peoria Unified School as your neighborhood school? What about the 15th closest school? My kids are, according to this new revised map, are set to go to Lake Pleasant if that map were to pass tonight. Well, Lake Pleasant is 7.5 miles from my house. That's not a neighborhood school. I can choose from 6 other Peoria Unified schools that are all closer. To give you an idea, Apache Elementary is just as close to my house as Lake Pleasant. But the other schools, I'm within boundaries of, well, the other 15 are charter schools, private schools, and Deer Valley Unified Schools. What this map does is has given me what our legislature and our governor likes to call school choice. Lake Pleasant Elementary is at that far, far corner of the valley right now. I've driven up in that area once for a Christmas party last year. That's the only time I've been anywhere close to there. It's not on my way to the grocery store. It's not on my way home from work. It is nowhere close to what I would call neighborhood school. I attend Zuni Hills activities after school. I just went to the movie night. My kids wanted to watch Trolls over there. We had a good time. Movie night now is 7.5 miles one way. Movie night will end at approximately, 8:30? Means we'll get home, shower, bed. It's going to be quite late. Lake Pleasant is not a neighborhood school to the Tierra del Rio neighborhood. And looking at the original boundaries and now these revised boundaries, I believe the Tierra del Rio neighborhood, the entire group, now that we're divided into 3 separate schools, is getting the short end of the stick on this. To ask the Tierra del Rio neighborhood to now divide itself up, go to 3 separate schools, only to know that a new boundary will be set in the future, possibly with a new school, possibly not. But we're kind of the odd man out on this. So I'm asking the board tonight to really consider this neighborhood, to consider that Lake Pleasant is not a neighborhood school for the Tierra del Rio neighborhood. I'm encouraging you to vote no tonight on this boundary change and to table this until next school year after the upcoming bond, hopefully, which hopefully will pass this time.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Sarah Moot.
I apologize, President Vangarelli, for the map for the last location, the Tierra del Sol, can we get that identified? The location that he was talking about, and Del Rio, I apologize, where that location is, and then the location that you're talking about.
Mr. Savoy, do you know where the...
With the cursor? I apologize.
No, that's okay. President Martinez. The area that, is it Mr. Price? Mr. Price is speaking of, and the folks that live in Tierra del Rio, can you see the cursor on the map?
Yes.
Okay. So there's actually 3 This area right here is part of Tierra del Rio. This area is part of Tierra del Rio. And this area is part of Tierra del Rio. Now this road here, so there's Happy Valley. So if you're driving out Lake Pleasant Parkway and you know where the Target store is and you take a left and you go out Happy Valley Road towards the 303, this area is right after you turn onto Happy Valley Road from Lake Pleasant Parkway and you're heading west. And there's a traffic signal out there at 107th Avenue. 107th Avenue takes you into these, into the neighborhood. So Tierra del Rio Boulevard is up there, Joe Max Road, and then the Northlands. Sometimes some of you may be familiar with that area of homes, the Northlands. And so when the committee and Mr. Harris worked on this, there's some roads that go through here. We don't know when. We've heard that Joe Max Road is going to connect from this part of Tierra del Rio out to Vistancia, which would make that travel a little bit easier. This section will go to Vistancia, this section will go to Lake Pleasant, and this section will go to Lake Pleasant, Park Ridge. Does that help a little bit? On the
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Moot? Thank you.
Thank you so much, no problem. I first wanted to start out by saying I had the pleasure of serving on the committee, and I can't even tell you how inspiring it was to see the diligence that not just administration, but other parents had in not just their school, but taking into consideration the schools throughout the district. When my kids started school, I handpicked a school, and I thought that's the school that I definitely want my kids to go to forever. And throughout this process, what I've realized is Peoria Unified School District is not just a school, it's an entire district, and that culture definitely does shine through. Specifically when we're poring over numbers and looking to see what would happen to a community that is going to be split, the committee had really strong discussions about how we can help service those kids in that specific community with the ambassador program or something similar to that, so that they're not severely impacted by moving schools or being so far from the rest of their community. So I really just wanted to take just a minute to say thank you so much, not just to the administration, but also to you guys, because this is not an easy decision, and there's definitely very strong opinions about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Speaker is Thomas Fife.
Thank you, Board. I thought I could provide some insight as somebody that was not really a part of this at all, just being a resident of Peoria, coming to the March 23rd, 28th, the first meeting, and kind of being oblivious to it all, and then just kind of going to every single meeting that transpired to providing this map. I guess I could start with the first meeting. Going there with my family, we were moving from one school to another. Obviously, it's not something that any household wants to deal with, but recognizing that because the bond isn't in place, and even if it did get approved, that people were going to have to move. Going there, not wanting my kid to move, obviously, watching the barrage of comments, questions, concerns to the panel, I left there thinking two things. First was, I really hope that if we have to move, that it's limited to moving forward, that it's only a couple moves or one move. And then when the bond does pass, hopefully it's just maybe one more, and it's not just a barrage of moves. And the second thought was that if I was a part of the panel, the way that the barrage of questions and the harsh, I guess, attitude towards the panel, if I was a part of them, I would have just said, you know what, we're doing what I said, and I'm not dealing with this. So why am I saying that? I tip my hat off to the people that came together to create this plan. I went to every meeting after that, and I truly saw the way that everybody actually did care about the community, that they literally listed out every single concern and went one by one to try to accommodate every single family, every single community, realizing that you're not going to be able to take care of everybody. But they did the same thing at the next meeting and all the meetings. And it just, for me, it really showed that Peoria isn't just about going behind closed doors and creating solutions that meets their own agenda, that they really do care what the community has to say. It's very inspiring. The other communities that I've been involved with, I've never seen anything like this. It's inspiring for me as just a parent to get more involved with my community. That's definitely what I plan on doing. And I hope that it really rings true, that you guys understand, and I know you probably do, the amount of work that the board put in this to try to please and take care of everybody, but also recognizing that the fact that they had to take care of the community as well as a whole, even though there's a few households that obviously are not going to be happy with the results. That's all I had to say.
Thank you very much. So, there's our, I'm sorry, we have one more. Jerry Tube? Sorry, Tub?
Thank you, President Pinelli and members. As a committee member, and I appreciate so much your acknowledgement of our hard work. There definitely was a barrage of harsh comments at our first community meeting, and rightfully so. This impacts everyone's day-to-day lives, their families, their children, and that's always a subject that's near and dear to people. When looking at this, there's a logical side and a personal side. Being on the board myself, I can look at this and say this does not benefit me personally. I voted yes on this idea, or on the plan we're proposing tonight, knowing that it put 2 years of work out the window for me. Because personally, my family has been working towards a goal ourselves too, and that's gone for us. But I can look at this map logically and say, this is the best thing for our community right now. When you look at every single parcel and the numbers involved in those parcels, and you try looking at moving, does this parcel go to that school or to this school? Does this family drive 7.5 miles to go to this school? It's not fun, but you look at the other side and say, are these schools overcrowded? Are we past fire code capacities for these schools? Are you going to be able to service every child lunch so that they get to eat today? Those are questions that we had to answer and look and say, what is the best way to go? And when we take a community like Peoria del Rio or Dove Valley, or where we were looking Forenza, and move them around the map, we have to start looking at things like, what if we chose to put a community over at Estancia? When we looked at Peoria del Rio, that would require us to push out Frontier's start time to a late start school, because we didn't realize the busing. And when you're looking at decisions like this, sometimes there are much bigger pieces that you don't realize until you become educated on them. I definitely wasn't educated until we started this process, and I was able to look at the numbers, the busing routes, capacity, etc. At which point, logically, it makes the most logical sense with the least amount of students impacted, as we looked at every piece of available information, trying to impact the least amount of students. It's not going to serve everyone. There were definitely some parents that looked and said, why my student? Unfortunately, it comes down to, we have to move some students, and why your student over this student over that student. We can't place a value on one individual student. We have to look at communities as a whole, and we have to look at our district as a whole too. So as somebody who can come in and say that this map isn't for me, this map is the best thing I think for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Savoy? Thank you. Mrs. Doan, I'll start with you for questions, comments.
Oh, goody. Mr. Savoy, how is transportation fully factored into this?
President Pangarelli, Member Doan, yes. I'm looking at Mr. King back there. He gave me the thumbs up. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just want to say to everybody, I didn't reply to all the emails, but I did read them. There were too many to reply, but I appreciate the hard work that's gone into this. It is very difficult, and we want to please everyone. We want all our kids to have the best that we can give them. And I believe that the committee has done a good job. We're going to talk about this and you know, decisions weren't voting on the map right now. But I do appreciate the hard work that's gone into it. Now, what was the decision made? All right, I don't know the names of all these communities, but especially that little small part that's being moved to Park Ridge and bus that far. Why was the decision made to move that group instead of something closer? I mean, how did you come to that choice?
President Pangarelli, Board Member Doan, I'll do my best. That entire area that we're speaking of, which I'm
South of
referring to all
Joe Max?
three pieces, right, as Tierra del Rio. One of the things I want to point out is that section that you're talking about right here currently is 38 students.
Right.
But it's projected, I believe, to go up to about 175, a little more than that, roughly. And then, while I'm there, I'm going to talk about the area just to the north of that as well. There's 51 students there currently, but when that's built out, the Northlands, we're anticipating 600 homes there, which would be 300 students.
Where is that?
The area just north of the area that Mrs. Doan is asking about. So
Just north of Joe
this
Max?
is the area that Mrs. Doan is asking about.
Yes.
Now I'm talking about this area right here that's going to Vistancia.
So it has 58, you said?
Has 51 as of when we did this work. It was the 40th day,
And
which
it's-
would have been October.
And it's going to how many?
There's 600 homes to be built in there, so we're projecting 300 students.
And then the purple area is currently 38 and projected to how many?
About 120 in 3 years. And then the blue section of that Tierra del Rio right now, this is pretty close to built out. There's 175 students there. So the challenge for us, because right now they all attend Zuni Hills, but if you recall,
It's very
Zuni Hills in
overcrowded,
3
yeah.
years will be full without those areas. And currently, if we do nothing, Zuni Hills will exceed capacity next year, and then you can see what happens the 2 years after that. So there's significant increase. To answer your question, Mrs. Doan, it really came down to, you know, trying to find the space available. That was the toughest spot. And we had room at Park Ridge, and transportation-wise, it worked. At one point, we had them going to Frontier because the other areas around there, you know, we were trying to loop that whole area to Frontier, but we then ran into a transportation conflict, and it would have necessitated changing the start time of Frontier Elementary, which was 1,000 students, and I was like, I didn't really want to do that. So we worked with transportation. Mr. King's department assured us that it's a better travel route from there to Park Ridge, and it would accommodate his drivers and his bus routes to be able to do that without making any other changes at any other schools. So that is a little bit of a leapfrog over the Zuni Hills area, but it's a straight shot down Lake Pleasant Parkway.
So it just made more sense transportation-wise rather than taking some people like out of the south end of Zuni Hills?
Correct, because the way that the road systems work and transportation, yes, that's what the committee decided on.
Oh, I see.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's all I have for right now.
Mr. Sandoval, would you like to go next?
So I'll mirror what Judy stated. First off, I mean, thank you very much for your diligent effort, Mr. Savoy and team, and the Boundary Committee. You know, I'm going to piggyback on what Mr. Fife stated. You know, I'm pleased that we took a very inclusive approach to making these decisions, meaning, taking a look and considerations and listening to, really all stakeholders, which means our parents and our community. So thank you for that. And that's clear, based on, the first community meeting, where we're impacting, over 1,300 students. And then after listening to the community, now we're down to, just over 700, I believe the number is. I believe it's Jennifer, right? You mentioned the 700 and, I apologize, 740. I think it was 740 students, right, that are currently going to be impacted. Is that correct? Right. So, go ahead. That's good.
President Pangarelli, Board Member Sandoval, confirming with Mr. Harris, those students are active students. So those are active today. So when we say we went from 13, I got the exact number right here. 1338. (1338) to 746. Those are active students currently enrolled in schools.
Okay.
No, I didn't want to call that out, but I just want to be clear because I heard that statement during public comment, and I had light bulbs going off in my head, and so that is confirmed. Those are active students enrolled today.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. So with that said, I would imagine, one of the variables or factors that was considered was certainly the future growth, right, in the northern sector, of our city. Here's my question. When we made those adaptations to the boundaries, we considered the number of students that are forecasted to, live in some of these communities that you mentioned, correct? That said, when we took a look at those numbers, does it make sense to, not move, those students who are currently living in those communities, attending these schools, and when those students, became reality, to live in those communities, put them, I don't want to say put them, but, place them, in schools that can accommodate that growth. I mean, did we take a look at that, I guess is.
Pangarelli, member Mr. Sandoval, we did look at that. We spent a great deal of time on that, actually. That's specific to the question of Tierra del Rio, as I just explained what the numbers will be and the growth with the build-out coming over what we were using, projecting out 3 years. That will have a significant impact. The next area that the committee looked at is that Meadows section of the Maracay Meritage. The question was, could they be assigned to a different school? And the committee looked at that very diligently. The question is, we have what we see there built now, and we're projecting out. If you base it on the projections, it becomes extremely tight if you move them to another location. And so the committee's recommendation was, after studying it over time, the recommendation was to keep them feeding in the Sunset Heights. What we heard from the community was, well, we're already going to the school, we've been there for a while, why not relocate them instead of us? But the committee did wrestle with that question on more than one occasion, and their recommendation was not to readjust that. So to answer your question, yes, we did address it, but the recommendation was not to realign, to leave it as it is.
And is that due to, just trying to minimize the amount of movement, when those communities, begin to become fruition or with those students?
President
member, Mr. Sandoval, it certainly was part of the equation. Because the committee was also trying to forecast in their mind, well, if a bond is approved and a new school is assigned, where would that school go? And, you know, we couldn't really spend a lot of time on that because we didn't really have a site, and we certainly didn't have the funding for that. But it did enter part of the conversation, and so I do think that was part of what the committee wrestled with.
Okay. And let me be clear, I mean, you know, the questions that I have are certainly, you know, as Judy stated, you know, we all, you know, probably received, you know, a lot of emails and communications from the community. So I want to make sure that, you know, being, you know, certainly good stewards, you know, of this district, you know, that, you know, those voices are heard as well. That said, if you can help me walk through this process, a student, based on the rezoning, let's say they're at Sunset Heights, now they're going to go to Coyote Hills, and as a result, they will feed in, Coyote Hills, they'll now feed into Sunrise versus Liberty, is that correct? Based on the
Yes,
reason.
that's correct. You mean if we change the elementary alignment?
Exactly right.
Yes, the recommendation from the committee would be that if you're going to attend Coyote Hills, then you would go to Sunrise High School, yes.
Those students still have the ability to go through the variance process to stay at Sunset Heights, is that correct?
Really, Member Sandoval, yes.
Okay. So, but if that took place, and, you know, it's a fifth grader 3 years down the road, now they're in eighth grade, because of the rezoning, and they're actually supposed to be at Coyote Hills, although they stayed at Sunset Heights due to the variance, the recommendation is that they still go to Sunrise Mountain because of the change in the zone, correct?
President Pangarelli, Member Sandoval, yes.
Okay. So here's my question. And again, just via feedback that I've received from the community is, if we don't change where the students feed into high school, can those high schools accommodate that? Meaning, so if the variance, what I'm trying to do is eliminate the variance process, right? Get them out of that process. So if they're in the variance process, they're at Sunset Heights, eighth grade, instead of having them now go to Sunrise because of the rezoning, you know, can we consider not changing the high school connections based on where they live, if I said that correctly, if that makes sense?
President Pangarelli, Member Sandoval, to answer your question, could the high schools accommodate what you're suggesting? Yes. We as a committee did discuss that. Having the high school boundaries just stay the same as they are right now today, not change those at all, right, or do the alignment with the elementary schools. But that's certainly the board's prerogative. The high schools could accommodate if we did not change the high school boundary at all. So just to clarify so that I understand, what you're asking is, we have a section that gets assigned to Coyote Hills. Those parents determine that they want to ask for open enrollment variance at Sunset Heights. They would continue there. Their high school assignment in your scenario would never change.
Correct.
Even though they, okay. The high schools could accommodate that, yes.
Okay. Good, yeah, because, you know, again, what I'm trying to eliminate is, you know, getting them out of the variance process and still continuing to, you know, go on to high school, you know, with their community, if you will. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Connect?
I have a few. It is certainly my instinct to honor the work that administration, Mr. Harris, Mr. Savoy, and the committee has done, but like Mr. Sandoval said, we got a lot of emails, and I think we need to do our due diligence, since we weren't part of the evolution of the proposal, that we ask the questions and feel confident before we make a decision that all the possibilities have been explored and that we're inconveniencing as few families as possible. So I have a few. Some of them have already been asked. In particular, the ones up in Tierra del Rio. The other one that is kind of, so far, is kind of a head scratcher for me is the Dove Valley area. I said in the meeting that we had, the study session, that I really, when I enter into these conversations and start thinking about this, I really have two main priorities, and one is the walkability of schools, and because I believe that fundamentally the real strength of the Peoria School District is neighborhood schools, and certainly walkability is part of that equation. And then the other one is, I think we have a responsibility to honor the taxpayers who pay taxes within our school district and those who have purchased homes within the boundaries of our schools, certainly, especially, like my family, for the very purpose of attending a specific school. So the area that really, to me, causes me the most concern is that Dove Valley area, because it seems to me that clearly that is within walking distance to Sunset Heights. And then the other part of it is, it seems to me that the other concern that people have brought to our attention via email and at the meeting is that Lake Pleasant Parkway is indeed a very heavily traveled road, and it seems to me that the area to the west of Lake Pleasant, which is across Lake Pleasant, looks at least on the map like a similar number of students, or at least a similar area that might fit in that little square. And so I'm wondering why that area to the west of Lake Pleasant isn't included in the walkable area that is Dove Valley.
Okay, President Pangarelli, Board Member Connect, I'm going to have you walk me through that one more time. I'm trying to
I can
orientate
come show
myself.
ya.
This is Dove Valley right here. Casa del Rey, okay.
Okay. Yes, why is
I got you.
Casa del Rey going to Sunset Heights
Area here.
instead of Dove Valley?
Okay, I understand. Our initial, President Pangarelli, Board Member Connect, our original proposal at the March 28th meeting had that, did have that scenario. Those students would attend Park Ridge. I apologize. Would attend Park Ridge Elementary. But to accommodate that move, we had to go to the Avenue of the Arts, which is the area down here at the bottom in the purple. And we relocated all of those students to Apache to free up space at Park Ridge to accommodate, thank you very much, to accommodate Casa del Rey. The committee's work then was not to move, after hearing that meeting, not to move Avenue of the Arts, leave them where they were at, which then filled in the space at Park Ridge. So we went back to the Casa del Rey area, and we knew that we couldn't take them all to Sunset, and that's where we made the split at 105th Avenue and north and south of Williams, and sent those children to Zuni Hills. And that number is 197 in the Alta Vista area, and I think it was 181 in the Casa del Rey area, and they remained at Sunset. So the primary reason, Mrs. Connect, is that by keeping Casa del Rey at Sunset, we did not have to impact Avenue of the Arts and Apache School. But we couldn't do it all, so we had to take a little sliver and send them to Zuni Hills. That's the answer for that.
Question two about that.
Well, it doesn't address my concern about walkability.
President Pangarelli,
The optimal situation for our families is being able to walk to school. I wish more families let their kids walk to school and not drive to school and be a danger to those kids that are walking to school.
Member Connect, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's not unusual for me to be at many schools that have no buses, and there's cars everywhere, but that's another conversation. But specifically to what you're asking is, There's a lot of busing that goes on in this area at a lot of these schools. They're not all walkable schools, whether it be Zuni or Vistancia. Frontier has a lot of buses. So there's a lot of busing schools in this area. To the area of Dove Valley, you know, currently they do walk to Sunset Heights. They do cross 95th Avenue. We do have a crossing guard at 95th Avenue in Adams. Our recommendation certainly would be, if that were to stand as it is, that the crossing guard would remain there next year for any of those 8th grade students that wanted to continue. And then if there were families who requested open enrollment, I think we would look at what that looked like, and I would certainly work with Dr. Stifler to consider a crossing guard, you know, there if there was a large enough population of students. So right now there is a crossing guard there at 95th Avenue in Adams.
That's the only part of the plan that I'm not really comfortable with. But, I mean, I guess if you're telling us that the committee has considered that and this is the best thing that, it's the best, okay. All right. Two other questions that came up that I think that we would be remiss if we didn't at least talk about is, are we, we've gone through this before, I need to vent it again. Are we sure that we cannot solve this problem in the short to mid-range with portables, containers, tents, whatever?
Let me take that one. Ms. Pingarelli, Ms. Connect, members, everyone. Space is the issue. Affording the space is the issue, the next issue that goes with that. So the cost of portables, the community's repeatedly said that. The problem is the money to even pay for portables. So for 2 classrooms, a ballpark price is $300,000. Okay, is $300,000. You can rent them for less than that over time. Mr. Ricks, $50,000 a year for 2 classrooms. We have looked at where could you possibly put them and do those possible things. The short-term crunch plan problem is, even if we want to do that, and that's ill-advised, it taxes the school. It doesn't increase the cafeteria space. It doesn't increase the bathroom space. It doesn't increase the parking lots. But sometimes you have to do that. We don't have the money to buy the portables, and in order to rent the portables, where we're also stuck on M&O being so tight, what we pay salaries is what we would have to pay the rent out of. And so we don't have a way to buy not an easy, clear way to buy the portables to do that.
The Tent City's open now, but the busing's really
I did not check the price of tents, yes ma'am, and they
it's
may
a
be.
really long bus ride, yeah. Okay, let's see. Mrs. Stone asked about transportation, that it was covered. Okay, I do have to say, in answer to some questions I had on my email, why can't we just build a new school? We're trying. We're trying, and of course the answer to that is we have to pass a bond. And the other one was, what are you going to do as a board member to see that the bonds or other funding passes? So I will tell you, we will do everything we can, but it's really up to the community. That's all I have.
Okay. Mrs. Seahar Martinez?
Thank you. Just to reiterate everybody's comments, the countless hours, and you mentioned the meetings, but I can guarantee you that you drove and you thought about it, you slept and you thought about it, and you woke up and you thought about it. And so thank you. And the fact that we had parents, I attended the community forum and watched them. Grandmother from Mesa, Mrs. Halston, came to represent her kids, her grandkids. Says volumes about our community and how lucky and blessed that we are, attend the 4th largest district in the state, and we have people showing up. So thank you. And the amount of feedback that we got is overwhelming, and I am very proud to say I live here. So thank you for that. With that being said, it's no shortcoming that we have to make a difficult decision, and as well as all of you guys, I want to make sure we address all the emails. One conversation that was brought up by a parent and in an email was the traditional school, specifically focusing on Dove Valley. Right now, as Kathy brought up and Mrs. Connect brought up the attention, we're rezoning it to Coyote Hills. Can you just give me a little feedback on, one, how many students are in that Dove Valley location, that's that small square? And two, how many students are at, that attend PTS, the traditional school? And we'll go from there.
Okay, President Pangarelli, Member Ceja Martinez. The current number of students in the Dove Valley area is 202. And the enrollment of the traditional school, I think is about, as of today, about what, 318, just about 300? About 300.
And it's on what campus?
It's on the Coyote Hills campus.
Yes. So from my understanding, they attend Sunset Heights now, but with this remap, we would redistrict them to Coyote Hills.
Yes, that is correct.
So to do our due diligence, if the conversation, because they've already been moved, comes up where we move them to a different site, has there been a thought process or questions surrounding that?
Pangarelli, Board Member Ceja Martinez, we did discuss at length the traditional school. Two of our parents on the committee are parents at the traditional school. One of the parents that spoke this evening is from the traditional school. And you also know that was one of the recommendations from the committee would be to consider a site for a separate traditional school. Our conversation and working with Mr. Harris, it'll be very, very tight based on our projection of what Coyote Hills is going to be at 959, 3 years out. And, you know, we're counting on the traditional school holding steady at 300, which it may grow more than that. So part of that calculation is taken into this idea of open enrollment, that some of the folks in Dove Valley will elect to stay at Sunset Heights on that open enrollment variance. So we should have capacity at Coyote Hills, but it will be tight, and we did have a lot of discussion about that.
And so to proceed, we would proceed with this plan, could this plan be implemented in stages in that area particular? If we decide down the road that there is a spot for a PTS, then Dove Valley, if we do it in stages, wouldn't have to be touched. And if we don't find it, we're still going to proceed with that plan. Is that an option?
President Pangarelli, Board Member Ceja Martinez, just for clarification for me, when you say stages, what do you mean specifically? Like certain grade levels going at a time, or I'm not...
That pocket of areas, so Dove Valley, if we approve it, next year the plan would be that that section would go now shift to Coyote Hills. But since we have PTS there, and we find another site the following year, or even the year after, because it's a 3-year out, then we can say, at that point, once we find a site for PTS, then we can leave that, my idea is the walking school, leave that section alone, because we have PTS there.
President Pangarelli, Board Member Ceja Martinez, we had conversation a little bit different than that with the committee as far as a phased-in approach. There wasn't really a lot of support for that. To your recommendation, I will tell you that there was a commitment from the committee and a commitment from ourselves as district facilitating team that as we looked at the Coyote Hills, we would always factor in the traditional school being there. So we were making that accounting for that school. We did not want to count on this idea that we may find another site somewhere. I'm not even sure if we'd be able to afford to do that. So throughout our conversation, the understanding was, or the non-negotiable was, that we would factor both of them in being at Coyote Hills campus.
Thank you.
Follow up to that?
Please.
Looks to me, based on these numbers, that it looks like, and I know that some populations of students require more space than others. But it looks to me like there's quite a bit of space at Apache, and there will be for the foreseeable future. So did we talk about moving the traditional school there and leaving it there?
President Pangarelli, Board Member Connect, we did not discuss that as a committee, no. The information that we received from the committee members was that not to relocate the traditional school just to another school. They'd already been at Zuni, now they were at Coyote Hills. Their feeling as a community of parents and students is, you know, we just keep getting
But
moved
this would be a
around.
forever home, because there is a lot, looks to me that for the foreseeable future, there is a lot of room at Apache.
So, to that end, then, that just creates more space at Coyote Hills, then, to keep Dove Valley there, is, I guess, the conclusion I would come to. I mean, why am I trying to create space at Coyote Hills?
That's a great point.
Right. So, I mean, they do.
Just trying to reiterate all the emails with the PTS school.
President
And-
Pangarelli, members of the entire board, I understand. I know that myself and Mrs. Bridgewater, numerous emails, telephone calls, the feedback forms that we received at both community meetings, all of those were read and reviewed. I understand. We responded to scores, I would just say. So I understand. They're good questions. We wrestled with them. I completely understand.
Thank you for that. And the only other one, in regards to student movement is our special needs kids. Being a teacher, having children in my classroom on IEPs, it takes a huge amount of effort to get movement. And so I was trying to get I was going through the reports, trying to identify how many special needs students are going to be directly affected by this movement. I know there are, when we have an IEP, there are some scenarios where we can keep them at the school. Has that been discussed? Because the least amount of movement on our special needs kids is the best interest, because they've created a foundation, and to reroute them could be detrimental on those children specifically.
It's a great question. We heard that from a number of parents in our community public meetings. We know, well, one thing you can calculate, about 12 to 14% of our population has IEP services of some sort. And it could be a variety of things, whether it be speech or, you know, significantly more involved. So if you're kind of looking for a ballpark figure, you pretty much use that as a calculation for each school. The way I would answer that question, the best way to answer that question is, as I stated at the beginning, the IEPs that you would see at Sunset Heights could be met on any of our campuses. I would certainly suggest to any family that had deep concern, what I would do is convene an IEP team. I certainly would not want to make that decision, nor our committee. But the proper venue for that would be an IEP team meeting, and have the people who know the child the best, mom and dad, the teachers that work with them, they can make that decision. The IEP team can ultimately make a decision that best serves that student. So that's what I would suggest to those families.
So there's a potential, because I'm thinking about our behavior specialist students, the ones that have gone through, created a plan, if they get upset, routine, that those students could potentially, looking at their IEP, stay on a variance at that particular school that they've created that foundation.
President Pangarelli, Board Member Sam Martinez, I would leave that to the IEP team.
Right. Thank you for that. Just to wrap up the information, we've heard a ton of conversation about how did we end up in this situation today, and it's not going to change. In a paper by Phil Hildeman, just a couple days ago, we had 100 investors, the city of Peoria, more properties, more developers. That conversation is, where is our city council? We really need to review that relationship and rediscuss our governmental agreement, the IAGA, the intergovernmental agreement, hasn't been discussed in 11 years. This would be something that we would rediscuss because it's not going away. The city planning and zoning, that conversation, I know, Terrell, you mentioned that we meet on a quarterly basis. I would love to have reports on that conversation and what are the outcomes of those reports. You mentioned an onboarding process. I believe it's more than just moving kids when we face this scenario. We are choice. Kids want to come to our schools. And whether it's up north or down south, we have variances across our district. In that onboarding process, we should elaborate across the district and really take a look at that ambassador program for all new kids. So I think our parents and you guys did a great job identifying that need, and the hope would be to expand that onboarding process. We definitely need to look at our variances and our out-of-district policy. Mr. Price, you mentioned school choice and our legislators bringing that up. You are correct, and people choose Peoria, and this is why we're having our discussion, because any school we go to, they're getting top-notch education. So yes, it is a conversation the governing board needs to address as our variances and our district policies. And communication. We've done a fabulous job hosting these community forums and getting it on the website. My hope is that we continue to educate them on the process, on things that we're going to have to face, because looking at the 2016 bond, it was crushed by the very people that are having to deal with this situation. And so I think it goes back to communication, and two little pockets said yes and everybody else said no. So we heard that message that the taxpayers don't want to pay for a new school. But in this message, it's totally different. So it comes back to communication and educating our community and how the governing board could help. We're all on deck. How can we help educate the community so that they can make that informed decision, because ultimately they're going to have to pay. And one piece we did not incorporate, and even in the conversations, the community forums and the governing board and the presentations, are the teachers. The teachers that have to deal with this transition, because they will be the counselors. They will be the ones nurturing our parents and educating them. And I hope, and I'm sure you guys had that conversation, but as a district administration, that we put in place a plan for them to help answer the community questions, those emails, those parent-teacher conferences, getting to know the parents and the students that they're going to have to serve. With all that being said, I'm grateful. You know that area from the back of your hand, so you know where to put signs when we go out for things. Just saying. Welcome to the discussion, because it's not going away. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Savoy, and I know this was asked by a couple other board members, you had mentioned about transportation for 1 year. That's if a sibling is going, if you want to explain it again, transportation will be covered with these boundary changes for every student that meets the criteria. Is that correct?
Pangarelli, members of the board, excuse me, I apologize. What our typical transition plan is that if a student's being reassigned to another elementary school, but they're a 7th grader right now, we would let them continue, family choice. They don't have to choose this, but if they wanted their 8th grader to stay and not have to relocate, we would provide a bus ride for the entire school year. If they have younger brothers or sisters and the family also chooses that they stay there, we do allow that as well, and they all have that bus ride. At the end of that 8th grade year, the bus service would not continue the following year, is our typical practice. So then that family would have to decide, do they want those younger siblings to stay there on a variance request and provide their own transportation, or go to the newly assigned school?
Okay, thank you.
Does that help? Okay.
It does. And also, I was looking back at the numbers that, we had a meeting on January 5th, and you gave a presentation. It was a meeting that was open to the public, and you gave a presentation on boundaries at that point. And so I was looking at your data, and it looks like, I just want to have the discussion about out-of-district students and in-district transfer students. I just wanted to get the impact of that. I know Sunset Heights now is not accepting out-of-district students. That's correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
I want to make one caveat. As you recall, the board, when we made that adjustment at Sunset, we did say that if they were out of district and they were going to be an 8th grader this year, we let them stay. There's a handful.
Right.
And if you're a teacher at the school
Your
and you
students.
live in downtown Phoenix and you bring your children to school with you, we allow that. So there's about 22 students, I think, currently out of district. Other than that, we completely shut that program down at Sunset Heights.
Okay.
Thanks for letting me
And then
provide that
looking
clarification.
also at the numbers of in-district but transfer students. Your numbers for Zuni Hills that I had calculated was 447 students that don't live around the area that transfer in from the district. And then for Sunset Heights, I had 250 that were not close to the school, but were transferring, and they lived in the district and transferring in. I guess my concern is I would like to have, from my point of view, and I agree with Mrs. Connect, is a neighborhood school, and that the priorities should be to the people who live near the school. And then if there's openings, to have transfers from outside, but in the district, but out, and then outside the district. So I don't know if that's clear. I just wanted to get the impact. It looked like there was a substantial number of students that were in district but transferring where they should be going to a different school and transferring to Zuni Hills.
President Pangarelli, members of the board, I'm trying to do my quick math. Zuni Hills, I believe the number of students that come from other schools that go to Zuni Hills is let's see, 78 and 60. That'd be 78 and 60, 148, 150, about 150 kids. Sorry about that.
No,
I
I'm
apologize,
going by
President
your.
Pangarelli. You're looking at the same chart?
I'm going, yeah.
Yeah.
I calculated twice, so I just want to make sure that,
So I'm showing about 150, and they have 35 students from outside the district that attend Zuni Hills.
okay.
And then the other school?
It would be Sunset Heights. It looked like there was 23 out of district.
Correct.
And 250 that were coming in from other schools. That should,
Sunset is 2, 4, 5, 6. I'm showing about 140. Hmm?
That's a lot of kids
Yeah,
that
about
are
140.
taking the space of the families that have bought homes in that area.
And so, Ms.
Those students are from Zuni Hills, is the biggest chunk. Other than that, it's 1 or 2, and we have a couple schools. We have 19 students from Coyote Hills that attend there, and 19 students from Park Ridge that attend there, which kind of makes sense. They're close geographically, and with the moves that went on 4 or 5 years ago, and then the others are 1 or 2 here or there. Let me just share this, President Pangarelli, members of the board. The open enrollment policy, the first thing we do each year in December and January is determine capacity. Do we have capacity at the school? And we do count those students in that cohort rollover. But, if there's room at the school, we have not adjusted that. If the school is not filled, I guess the question would be then on Sunset Heights, would you just eliminate those 140 students, take them out of the mix?
that's a question.
Well, policy would say that you would determine capacity, so if we made these boundary adjustments, capacity would be there, even to the sense where we said with Dove Valley, we would allow those students to apply for open enrollment and variance. If you look at it the other way and you eliminate the in-district open enrollment at Sunset Heights, it does not answer the question of not doing anything at Sunset Heights, because by reducing by 140 kids, you're still going to be maxed out with the kids who are going to still come in. In other words, if you look at the growth at Sunset Heights,
Perhaps Mr.
Did that also.
on this chart here, oops, if you look at this chart here, Sunset Heights, you're up at, 17, 18, you could probably get by with no adjustment, but 18, 19, if you remove the 140 of in-district enrollment, you're still over 1,200 plus at Sunset Heights. Point being that regardless of the children from other schools within the district attending there, you're still going to exceed the capacity at Sunset Heights. Is that?
No, I did that in my calculation also. I seen that in 1819, 1920, that if you take all of those students and have them go just to their local schools, that it would not still meet. We would still be over capacity.
And President Pangarelli, members of the board, of that 140, I suspect there's at least 20, and I remember this because we did the work with Mrs. Conley last year, that are employees' children.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be part of that factor too.
Okay.
Mr. Savoy, perhaps it would be illustrative, if this were to pass, what's projected to support Zuni Hills and Sunset Heights regarding open enrollment, the variance process, how would the district support those schools to protect people who actually live in the area? The discussions that we've had, if you'd please illuminate the board.
Okay, President Pangarelli, Dr. Stifler. On this revised zoning plan, you can see that Sunset Heights would be at 782 next year, so there's a capacity there of just under 300. So our plan would be, if the board were to approve the recommendation as is put forth by the committee tonight, that, and I've already spoken with Mrs. Conley as well as Mr. Maines, our process would be those folks that would be impacted would have eligibility because there would be space to apply for open enrollment variance for next year. And so any of those people impacted in that Dove Valley neighborhood, if they chose to do that, we would certainly make every effort to accommodate that. We'd have up to 300, as I just stated. We know there's 202 students in that area, so if all 100% of the people chose to do that, we know we could accommodate them next year. Then as you go out the next couple years, there is not as much space, and we'd have to look at that, but then that would get into that process that you were talking about on who would be eligible, and we would follow our policy, which is the enrollment criteria of, did you attend there last year? Did you have siblings that attended there last year? And those people would take first prerogative over other folks that would be requesting. So there is a process in place to do that. We believe we could do that in the first couple of years. Then it's going to be really, really tight.
Mrs. Pingerelli. Mr. Savoy, you may have already answered this question, but it's kind of bouncing around in my head again. If Sunset Heights is the major overcrowding problem, and Frontier looks like it's got ample capacity, why is the Meadows going to Sunset Heights?
President Pangarelli, Board Member Connect, the piece that you don't see,
the map.
the piece that you don't see factored in here at Frontier is the special education program. So that's the other part of this, is the utilization of the facility. We have, I think, 5 classrooms over there for the ASD program. And then in addition to that is the preschool program, which I believe holds 6 classrooms of space. So these are programs that don't have 30 students in a classroom, but they take that many classrooms. So that's something you don't see on this chart, but something that the committee was aware of and that we talked as we processed through that. So even though it shows a capacity of almost 800, the actual utilization of the facility is much closer to 100%. Does that help a little bit?
Yes. Is there any way that when these things are brought up that you could just note in there a high special needs capacity in a certain area, so we know that going in? Because we're just looking at numbers and that, it messes with us.
President Pangarelli, Board Member Doan, we certainly could. The schools that have specialized programs for special ed on this list are Zuni Hills and Frontier Elementary. And then I believe Lake Pleasant, Vistancia, Frontier, don't want to forget anybody, also have robust preschool programs. And Park Ridge. Thank you, Mrs. Swartzstedt.
Well, Mr. Savoy, I wanted to thank you and your team, and the committee, all the members. This has not been an easy process, I don't think I know for anybody, including the governing board. It's a difficult situation, and I'm not sure if things are going to change substantially in the next, immediate future at least. So I guess with that being said, is there any more questions from the board?
Yes, I would just like to appeal to the committee members. Having heard the questions that the board has asked tonight, with this or this, do you still think this is the best decision that we could come up with? Do you feel like all the issues have been explored and solutions have been tried out and this is... Okay. Well, we take this very, very seriously because of, like you did. We know we're impacting people's lives, so we want to make sure we've uncovered everything. So thank you very, very much for your service.
All right, thank you. No other questions? No other questions, okay. Well, this is a voting item, so members, yes.
I apologize. I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but I'd like to go back to my comment around not changing the boundaries of the high schools. We talk about impacting lives. We talk about, community schools. I think if we have the ability to accommodate those students at the high school level and get them back into their community schools, I'd like to move that we don't change the high school boundaries.
Mr. Savoy, your opinion on, I know you'd said that the high schools could accommodate.
President Pangarelli, members of the board, the high schools can't accommodate that. The high schools can accommodate that if you decided to go in that direction. The impact on that would be, on this map, Dove Valley would stay at Liberty High School, not have their adjustment to Sunrise. The other thing that would happen is this area here, this pink area that's going to Park Ridge, currently their boundary would change to Sunrise. They would stay at Liberty High School, which Liberty High School is right here. So they would stay at Liberty. All these other areas would not have a change. They'd be fine. Oh, this blue area up here. Sorry. So this area here would also stay at Liberty. So in that sense, if you look at it geographically, if you don't change the high school boundaries, these two areas right here would stay at Liberty, and Liberty's right here, and this area would stay at Liberty, and their Liberty's right there.
Mrs.
And we
Pemberley?
can accommodate that.
To ask a question, because I kind of experienced this, I went to Oakwood. We grandfathered in Centennial. Danielle, Miss Ari, and I, we were in the same grade, and she went to Cactus. She was rerouted. If you don't mind, do you recall the experience or the impact of the students in our classmates that we went through the same process? Because on Centennial side, when we grandfathered in and stayed, got a variance in Centennial, we didn't have any impact. We stayed in the culture and didn't feel the impact. When you went with the rebounding to Cactus High School, do you remember what the impact was on students there?
President Pingarelli, Mrs. Sehan Martinez, my personal experience, I'm not sure how relevant it is to this. I was very much looking forward to being a Cactus Cobra. I had some friends of the family that had gone there, and so that was was a great choice for my family at that time. So I still retain friends at both locations, and I'm not sure that I saw a major impact there.
And that's what I was looking at, is if we would split up this home school and they decide to go back to their community school, would there be any impact on the relationships or their experience, or detrimental to their growth? So from my experience, I could say there was no impact, and I just wanted to see from the other side what you experienced.
Can I come in on that? I mean, and I have, in my experience, within PUSD and with other school board members from across the state, have had this same situation. I do take a little comfort in knowing that as hard as this is on the grown-ups, it's not quite as hard on the kids. They tend to adjust more rapidly and be more resilient sometimes than the grown-ups. That's only a little consolation. I still don't take it lightly, but there is that.
So I think if I can, further along, I mean, I think in addition to the social and emotional impact, but where I'm also headed is trying to mitigate the amount of movement for those students who will take advantage of the variance, to stay at Sunset Heights. So when they graduate from Sunset Heights, again, those who are going to go to Coyote Hills based on the rezone should go to Sunrise Mountain, but this way they stay with that class, that group, because they'll feed into the high school that they should have fed in originally without the change. Does that make sense? Sorry.
So the question was asked about, the question on the table is about the high school boundaries. A member in the audience, a member of our committee, stated that if you're on a variance at the elementary school and as an 8th grader, if you want to go to that high school that it feeds to, you can. The answer is yes, you can, but you're on a variance.
Right.
What I think Board Member Sandoval is proposing is that with not changing the boundary, you want to mitigate further down the road for those kids who are being adjusted now, that they would stay with their group they're with now if they wanted to go to that high school without a variance.
Correct, because you're on a variance, permitting capacity.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
At the high school.
So, members of the board, just to be clear, we do have 8th graders across the district who request variances to attend the high school that the elementary school that they're attending on variance is, but they're there on a variance. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yep.
Can I ask a question here? Committee considered this, right? Went back and forth on it, you said. Can you give us the main reason why you decided to go with changing and feeding them into another, changing the boundaries with the high school as well?
President Pangarelli, Board Member Doan, and I'm speaking on behalf of the committee, so correct me if I... We had a lot of discussions on this. And frankly, where the committee landed was that if you're reassigned to the school, the elementary school, you're going to be with those children all the time.
That was my thought.
Those are the kids you're going to make the partnerships with. Just continue on that path
That
with
was
them
my
in the high
thought.
school. Is really where the committee settled. I know myself and Ms. Bridgewater, we had different conversations with the committee, tried to vet it out different ways, but we took the vote, I think, 5 or 6 times over 2 different meeting days, and it stayed that way. Talking, I think the high school folks, just talking with them informally, it's not a problem. I think, they're okay with the boundaries the way they are now. So there might be some appeal to that for those families. And if you look at the map, really on the long term, that area that's going to go to Frontier and that area to Park Ridge, I mean, really, Liberty is a stone's throw away from their home. I mean, it's pretty close there. So
So I guess
Yes, please, come up to the microphone so we can hear you. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, after, you'll have to,
I just want the board to have an opportunity to understand the conversation around the high schools. My name's Melissa Briggs. I have 4 students. I'm on the committee, but I have 4 students in this district. 3 of them are in elementary school, and 1 of them is a freshman at Liberty High School. So I have a freshman, I have an 8th grader, I have a 5th grader, and I have a 2nd grader. So we cover the spectrum of them all. And having 1 kid in high school and 1 kid in 8th grade, and one's a boy and one's a girl, ready to go into high school, the kids want to be with their friends. If they went to the elementary school with them, that's who they want to go to high school with. And if you do not change the high school boundaries, now you will have the kids that are like in 5th and 6th grade, they're going to school together, they will have to get a variance to go to school with the other kids, high school with other kids that are in their school. It makes more sense to have the ones that are already on variance continue on a variance through high school if that's their choice, rather than forcing those who made the move, say if they live in Dove Valley and they made the move to Coyote Hills and therefore their high school's now assigned Sunrise, to make them get a variance to go to Sunrise with the rest of their school does not seem like a logical solution. And as a parent, having kids in high school and kids in elementary school, that's not a solution I would prefer. Obviously, if they're getting on variance to Sunset Heights and they want a variance then on to Liberty, that's a choice they can make. But to force the variance on parents that made the move with the boundary changes and then saying variance them to high school, that seems less logical. And I asked my kids about it. My son attended one of the community meetings and listened to all the conversations. He had some interesting thoughts on the whole thing, but they all agreed with me that they would not, if they voted, they would not want to have their school assigned to 2 different high schools. That's not the way that they would prefer it. Overwhelmingly, everyone I've talked to, that's not what the kids want. The parents may have a different opinion, but that's not what the kids want.
got it, and thank you for that. I guess what I'm trying to really fully understand is the lesser of the 2 variance evils, right? Which one is going to be more detrimental to our students and their families than the other? So, if I'm hearing that, we're not going to realize a lot of variances of students who want to stay at Sunset Heights, then I'm going to certainly, err, on the parents and the students always. Thank you.
right. Are there any more questions, comments, or? No. Okay. Well, you're welcome. With that, this is an action item. So I will need a motion and a second.
I will go. I move to support and approve the recommendation by the committee.
I'll second.
All right, members, please cast your vote. It's still saying voting in progress. Has everybody voted?
And mine it's not up.
A voice vote would work? Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes 5-0.
Mrs. Pingarelli, this is unrelated. Every time someone talks, this thing is buzzing all of a sudden.
And I just thought maybe it was my tinnitus. Okay. No, it's not. All right.
No. And then just for the record, that's a new problem, so.
It is. Okay.
But if it costs any money to fix it, we'll live with it.
Well, we've beat on them pretty hard, but they haven't fixed it yet.
So,
And-
may I just make a recommendation?
Yes, please. That would be great. So let's take a 10-minute recess until we can get everything working again.
Tons of feedback, tons. Read and you read. Everybody set? Yep, we're ready, rock and roll.
You guys set? Okay. All right, we're ready to get back at it. All right, next agenda item is agenda item number 9, discussion and consideration of the formation of a Citizens Bond Advisory Committee to analyze the need for a bond election. And this is Mr. Hicks.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Darwin Stifler, colleagues and community members. Thank you very much for allowing me to present tonight. This is piggybacking on the discussion that you just had, and that is the formation of a bond advisory committee. So I'll quickly go over a policy, a timeline. I always like to just remind people we do have existing bond funds, so I'll talk about that just really briefly and then talk about committee membership. So just as a reminder, this is somewhat unique. Not a lot of school districts across the state of Arizona actually have a policy that requires, and if you see right in the middle there, it says it shall be the policy of the board to use the input from a Citizens Advisory Committee and examine the educational and building needs of the district. As the needs of the bond issue arises, the Citizens Committee may encourage and promote the passage of a bond issue and collect funds as needed in such promotion. This necessitates the need for calling a Citizens Bond Advisory Committee as they will come together and make the recommendation. Just really quickly, our proposed timeline is really tight. What we've done the last couple of years is starting in January. This is asking the question for formation now, so we're a few months behind. So the committee will have to this month, have a few meetings, come together with a recommendation for the governing board in May to adopt a resolution calling for the election. Then throughout that time, we'll be working with attorneys if that goes that way. I have to work with the county elections department with their attorneys, get the voter pamphlet and all the language together properly, the ballots go out, and then mail the pamphlets and the ballots in October for early, and then have the election in the first Tuesday in November. Our existing bond fund, we did have the 2012 bond, as you might remember from either our update in October or when we sold the bonds back in early summer. We have now sold a total of $125 million of that $180 million, so about 70%. So we still have $54 million left, and per our pamphlet, that will be for facility renovations and improvements, and $7.7 million on transportation. Just as a note, I know that does not add up to the $54.8 million. There is the cost of issuance, so the difference is we actually have to pay for that cost of selling the bonds. The committee membership, the previous membership was a continuation of the Citizens Committee formed in 2015, so the task was if we can just continue that. This time I would say we would recommend, administration is recommending a new committee, recommend that it be 10 members, one from each governing board member would send our superintendent a name, that they would nominate a person, and then 5 members identified by the boundary committee, since this is really coming their genesis of making that recommendation. And then I would ask that the superintendent would identify a committee chair that I would work with to work through our agenda and get a recommendation back to the board in May. That is a quick update on forming the committee, and I will put it back to the board.
This time I'll start with Mrs. Connect.
I have no questions. I support the move.
Mrs. Ceja Martinez.
I just have some comments. So reiterating this timeline, that's pretty fast. So if this were proceed, this is going in a special election?
Madam President, members of the board, school districts can only go in November for any bond or override. So it is the November election every year, so that general election. So it's an in-between election, but November is the only time we can go.
Okay. My concern is this map that we received, that this school district, including two major cities, Glendale and Peoria, of 500,000 citizens roughly, crushed this bond. The time and amount of resources that we're going to spend with a new committee to go out to the community, it's gonna cost the district roughly, I think you said $250,000 to go for an election. And we haven't spent the time and resources to educate the community. We do have a small pocket of area that understands the crucial need now, because they've lived it, they're going through it. But two very important decision makers showed up to these community forums. Mr. Andy Warren from the Mary Kay Homes and Michael Kern from another developer. They said they would put their money and resources, not time, money into going out for a bond. Looking at our PAC committee, Vote for Kids, PUSD, in the last 2016 election, they spent $267,000 for a bond that got crushed. And then if we look at the cost of the district, roughly $250,000. We're looking at $500,000 on a bond that may or may not pass. The message I'm seeing is that the community needs somebody else with skin in the game. If the state is not paying for it, and the citizens don't want to incur debt, because that's what a bond is, a debt, who's going to pay the bill? We are. Then who else is left in the game to participate? Those are the developers. I pulled up the donations from the PAC. They were contributors from HVAC. They provide our AC units. Peoria High School, we just approved a $1.2 million repair. Contractors, architects, core constructor builders. So that concerns me, that I appreciate their dollars, but if they were to put their dollars in a better spent area, which is building a school, then we wouldn't have to have the taxpayers pay the bill. We could revisit the agreement that we have with the city. And as a citizen brought up, I believe her name was Jennifer Jonathan, the Mallarus tax, those are all pieces of the puzzle, and I feel that we're just rushing into going for a bond as soon as possible. We need a bond, we need money, we need schools, and with all this information, I do have concerns, but I do support a committee to review all these information, all the pieces of the puzzle. And with that being said, I'm done.
Thank you. Mrs. Doan?
I share Mrs. Sejar Martinez's concern. That was not just a no that we got on that bond. It was absolutely not. Because I think because we had just passed the override and stuff, I'm very concerned with going out for the bond right now. And I do want to look into any of those alternatives that might be available, or there's going to have to be schools up in the north, but I don't know if we're going to get the populace to vote in a bond on it. Things are tight for them right now. So I definitely want to look into options. I don't know why a bond would be our only option. I know there's not a lot of other option that has been explored, but I do think we should try to look for donations or something like that. I don't know, couldn't hurt.
Dr. Stifler, you had a comment?
Ms. Pingarelli, members of the board, those groups that donated to the Political Action Committee, which is different than the school district, separate than the school district, supported political action committees all across the state. They have a history of doing so. Most of those bonds passed, some of those bonds did not. I guess I don't want to make this meeting go longer. I do want to, and I will work to prove to the board that our relationship with the city is absolutely solid. And we are working with the city to put frequently asked questions on there, because the city is not allowed to tell a developer, you're not allowed to develop. You're not allowed to tell someone, yes, you can only pay taxes on that property, you can't develop it. That is not possible to do. So as we work through those things, on to do that, I also want to just right here to say that the developers, we have agreements, handshake agreements for pieces of land that are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and those sorts of pieces. It's the buildings that we don't have. On California law is different than Arizona law. I do not perceive that our legislature is going to be friendly on requiring developers to do that. The other piece is we do have agreements. The city has helped us to a great deal, and we do what do we call the $1,000 per?
Madam President, members of the board, we have a developer assistance agreement, the DA that we discussed.
It's simply not enough to build schools.
Madam President, members of the board, it was never designed to build schools. It was designed to support the increasing growth needs of a school district or a development would place on a school district. It was not designed to build school districts or schools in that sense. I'll just leave it at that.
I appreciate, Ms. Pingarelli, go ahead. Appreciate that feedback. I looked at the city of Glendale, and there was a property that was discussed. I talked to Councilmember Ray Milnar that was up for a rezoned. The developers came in, they wanted to build certain houses. The community came in and pushed back, and they said no. The developers came back and said, let's build a charter school. The community said no. So we do have power. We just have to show up and tell our city and our elected officials what we want. And in Peoria, they don't want a bond. So we're gonna have to think outside the box, because what we're doing now is not working. It's maybe a wonderful working relationship, but it's not good enough to service our kids.
Mr. Sandoval.
Thank you. So, quick question. You know, knowing that we're kind of behind the eight ball here, we've missed all Q1 of 2017. What I guess line items are we having to compress in a very short amount of time to make up some of that?
Madam President, members of the board, it is doable. We just had a whole committee work for the last 2 years talking all about this, so there's a lot of data already out there. I would say we don't have enough time to do a full inventory assessment of all of our sites' needs, but we did that last year and we did that in 2010. So the timeline might be compressed. We lost a quarter. That is only our own time. Last year at this time, we still didn't even call the bond at this time. So we're still ahead of calling for the election from the governing board standpoint. A lot of that, in all honesty, will determine how quickly can we get members on the committee and how many times can we meet. I can meet multiple times a week. We'll have to process and get a lot of it. It'll be prioritized. It'll be a lot of work, but
Sure.
We're not in any danger of missing anything at this point.
So I'll say this. I mean, I'm absolutely for the the formation of a citizens bond advisory committee. I think some of the alternative revenue channels that have been expressed this evening, I think in addition to just understanding those, it would be interesting to also understand the timing and the feasibility of actually implementing some of those revenue channels, in a short amount of time, I guess, because there's no doubt. I mean, the narrative is there. I think we've heard from many this evening that there's a clear understanding and there's a need to build new schools in the northern sector of our district. So, all I would ask is, again, some of those alternative revenue channels, we can also understand just timing on those and even just the feasibility of implementing those.
Madam President, members of the board, if I could just talk really quickly, every revenue channel that I've heard that hasn't already been thought of that's actually available, all lies at the legislator's feet. We do not have the power and authority. We have DAs already approved and signed with our developers. We can't go back and say, hey, these agreement that we signed, we're going to break it. We're going to do something different. All those revenue streams that we're talking about that have been mentioned either at the boundary committee or even with our public speak at the last meeting, every single one of those lies with our legislature, creating more flexibility or changing the laws right now. Can we ask for donations? We do ask for donations. We talk with vendors all the time. I talk to Mr. Kern on a regular basis, almost every month. They're not building a school. Developers, there's only been one that I know of in the last 20, 30 years that's actually built a school. What they're looking for is they're trying to change laws to say, hey, we'll help fund the school up front. Once the SFB funds it, we get reimbursed. They're not talking about building a school. And so right now, we do everything we can, and we'll look at every revenue source we possibly can, but to get an elementary school of nearly $20 million, there's no one person or one entity that's going to pony up and do that.
Thank you.
Ms. Pingarelli?
Yes.
Now that I've heard some things, I'd like to react to them. I commend you for your thinking out of the box, and it would be wonderful if we could get some other entity to pay for a school. And thank you for your due diligence exploring some of those options as well. And I'm sure that these topics will be revisited by the committee when they come up. But at the end of the day, if the community wants a school, the community will have to pay for a school. We used to pay higher taxes to the state of Arizona, and the state of Arizona paid for schools. They don't do that anymore. The state has arranged it so that there is more tax burden on local taxpayers. That's just the way it is. We didn't make the rules, the legislature made the rules. If our community wants schools not to face this heartbreaking dilemma again, they will have to pay for it. And that decision on whether or not it's in the best interest of this school district and this community to go out for it lies in the hands of the committee to guide us whether or not we want to move forward in that. And so I support that. To the question of time, we've already lost a year. If we had passed the bond last year, we would have broken ground on a new elementary school by now. We would be well on our way. We've lost a year. And I don't recommend that we lose another year and lose more families to charter schools in our beloved school district.
Mrs. Pingerelli. Okay. Just one more thing. Both my colleagues have discussed equity. We keep talking about new schools up north and looking at that our tax dollars extend from way up north of Estancia to way down south of Country Meadows. My hope is that the committee would look at dollar for dollar up north to dollar for dollar down south. That we have that money spent the same, because up north they're going to get brand new state-of-the-art schools, and our southern schools are not going to experience that brand new school, so let's do more for them. So other than looking at options for a bond, I would like that equity piece included in that conversation.
I agree with that. I agree that we need to make equitable decisions on how that how our money is spent, but not necessarily equal, because equitable and equal are not the same. Right now, the pressing need is in the north, and we do have pressing needs in the south. They're not building new schools, but they're addressing other safety needs and facility needs and aging needs. So, of course, I know that the committee will consider that as well.
And Ms. Pingerelli, down south, from what I heard from Mr. Savoy, there's still construction going on, and it's potential that we could have some growth down south. Seeing that I lived in the southern schools, I know what they need in regards to construction. I lived it. I have colleagues that are living it and students that are experiencing it. So you're right, equitable is not equal, or however you want to say it, but dollar for dollar, down south as much as up north. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hicks. The only comment that I have about your presentation, and it is about being equal or equitable, is that we have people on the committee that is representative from the whole district. I know the way it is now, we have 5 from the boundary committee, and I just want to make sure that people from the south, because everybody is going to need to vote on this. So I just wanted to make sure that we have representation from people from the south also.
Madam President, members of the board, that would be the board's, each board member would be nominating somebody. if we're taking 5 from the committee is what the recommendation of administration is, those were 16 parents that were in those schools affected, which is all from Apache North. To get equal would mean that the board would have to nominate those additional 5 people from the southern part of the district.
Mine's a Southie. My nominee will be from the south.
Mine also. Okay, as long as that, but if the 5 nominate people that are from the north, I guess, you know, looks like we're not gonna, but I just want to make sure that we do have equal representation, so thank you.
That's noted.
All right. This is a voting item.
Mrs. Pingarelli? I'm just gonna make a motion.
I'm sorry, that would,
All right.
that would be, yeah, it's been a
Yeah.
long night.
Yeah, that's
Go
okay.
ahead.
I move to convene a citizens committee, a citizens bond committee.
Second?
All right, now, this is a voting item. Members, please cast your vote.
Mine is still not. That's how it was this time.
We're still having problems with Mrs. Sejar Martinez. Would you,
I logged back out, let me log
we
in.
can do a voice vote to make it. All right. All in favor? No, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Yep, I did.
Passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, now it shows. Okay. All right. Next item.
Have a good night.
Item number 10, consideration of the award of performance pay for certified and administrative staff as earned during the 2016-17 school year. Mr. Hicks again.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Darwin Stifler, colleagues, and community members. I'm going to continue going on with my agenda items, and this one is our performance pay. And so, thank you very much. I'm going to go a little bit on certified first, and then I'm going to jump to administration, and knowing that it's 9 o'clock now, I'm going to try to go a little bit quick in some of that. So please interrupt if you have questions, or we can have them at the end. The Classroom Site Fund, so this is the certified, which was established when the Prop 301 was approved by our voters back in 2000 to increase teacher salaries. It also contains performance-based components. So the fund and the Classroom Site Fund is funded from 2 main sources, which is a sales tax that was increased to go into that fund, and then also revenue from the state land trust. The sales tax, it does vary from year to year, although it's somewhat predictable based on economic conditions. The state trust land is a little bit more complicated because it is one element of a lot. And so I say that because I think there's about 9.4 million acres that were set aside for beneficiaries. I want to say about 8.4 of it is just what we're talking about. So every single square acre of that they have at the state land trust, they have an identified beneficiary for it. So we're not talking about all of it, we're talking about some of it, and so I know I'm already getting into more of the details that we need to. But when this was passed, it essentially said the interest earned on that fund generates around $72.3 million. So back in 2000, they said, hey, let's cap it. Any interest above the $72.3 million will go into the Classroom Site Fund. And so that is whenever a piece of land is actually sold, that state trust land, and the teachers and students of this state are the beneficiary. It goes into the permanent fund, and then that permanent fund cannot be used. The corpus can't be touched, but you can use the earnings from it. Then the other thing they have is expendable revenues. So they also, almost every single acre in this entire state, not all of them, but the vast majority, are used in some manner, either leases, permits, or some type of other non-permanent increase in revenue from that stream. And so that generates a lot. 100% of that revenue that's generated goes into the Classroom Site Fund, as long as the schools are the beneficiary. Goes into the Classroom Site Fund, and the Classroom Site Fund then is broken down into 3 funds, which is a base pay, performance pay, and menu. So much like we're talking about the performance pay component of it, it is a requirement, and this is only for certified staff. just, I always like to give a little bit of history on it, is that I think that was around $410 per weighted student count back in 2008. It is climbing back up, but we are still not at those pre-recession levels. The performance pay amount, it is really, we take the beginning balance from last year, we take the number, and then we look at what's the allocation if everybody gets a full share, and make sure that we don't go overexpended on it. So we try to keep a little bit of a balance, and so this year the recommendation is to keep it the same as last year, which is $2,600 per teacher. I'll keep going.
Keep going.
Administrative pay performance is a little different. This is funded directly from the M&O fund, so it is not a separate classroom site fund. It's been in place for about 20 years. So one of the unique things that Peoria has had is, I believe it was Dr. Paul Kohler back in the day. I think Steve's the only one around here that was back then. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Dana's waving her
Back
hand.
in those days. But Dr. Kohler was the one who put together and said, I'd like an administrative performance plan. And so you can see that's been in place actually longer than the classroom site fund. And this recommendation for administration is at $2,050, which is the same amount as last year. And that's the end of the presentation.
All right, thank you very much. Let's see, I'll start with Mr. Sandoval.
I guess just to summarize, I mean, the recommendation is to keep everything the same as, as prior years. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Doan?
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mrs. Connect? Ms. Sehamud Hughes?
No.
Okay, I do not have any questions either. All right.
So I'm going to go ahead and move that we approve the award of the performance pay for certified and administrative staff as earned during the 2016-2017 school year.
I second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Members, please cast your vote. Passes 5-0. Okay, next item. Item number 11. Consideration of course fees, extracurricular activity fees, and parking fees for 2017-18 school year. Mr. Hicks.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Darwin Stifler, colleagues, and dwindling community members. It is great to still see you guys hanging on. I am trying to go quickly. We're going to go to the presentation, even though all these attachments are relevant. I would say let's back out of this and go to the course extracurricular activity and fee schedule presentation. The very bottom one. Yes, please. Thank you very much. Thank you. So there are some regulations regarding the extracurricular activities. They're defined. It is always good to go through the definition of that they're optional non-credit activity that supplements the education program of the school, whether they're offered before, during, or after regular school hours that require an enrolled student to pay a fee. Equipment, uniforms for athletics, band uniforms, in-state and out-state trips that are solely for competitive events are all specifically listed within the statute. Oops. Oh, now it's going too fast. It is required that the governing board set a fee schedule for our extracurricular activities, and the law does allow that the governing board may waive the fee, and the governing board must authorize the principal to waive fees if it creates an economic hardship. But even though on the previous slide I said it had a fee, it was in this last legislature, they actually took it out. It started during the year, so we started this fiscal year with that you had to charge a fee, and then because it was 90 days after they ended, it was probably sometime in the end of September or end of August 1st September, that requirement that they actually charge a fee was eliminated. I'm going to go through some of the fees. There's some of the other attachments. And essentially, just jump into what the board said last time. Essentially, nothing's changing from last year. I'll hit a couple of the changes, but very little changes from year over year. So same field trips, we normally charge a minimum transportation fee. Competition varies based on the competition. District-approved supplemental program. Kids Zone is in there now. I will say we were putting Kids Zone in. We're still actually working on that. So that's a footnoted on our schedule that can change. We will probably bring that back to the board in either Thursday report, but we're giving the superintendent or designee the authority to make a change within the proper notification or notice time. But we'll definitely let the board know that. Fees, summer activities, this is the same, $50 weight room, open gym. Camp fees, it's all based on the program when they submit and we set the fee. Participation fees at the high school still sitting at $100, $200 max per family. Elementary athletics, $25 with a $50 max per family, and then the student athletic pass. Tutoring fee, locker fee, yearbook fee, nothing changes. Here are some changes to the class fee. We do have an extensive course fee catalog that does have fees tied to it. These are the only changes. And so we have beginning and advanced weight training, a new fee to help with repair and replacement of equipment. You probably heard me say that capital is a big need within our district, and so they are competing, and so it's having a hard time replacing, so they would like to charge a fee for that class. Food service, nothing changing there, the meal prices. Facility rates, the rental fees, there are 3 changes. One, adding, some of this is we look at what other districts around us are doing and what's going on, and one, we saw that they're actually starting to rent their stadium, football stadiums and such, and so we have an amount on there for a stadium with lights and stadium without lights. We did ask for equipment whenever you rent a facility rental. If you're getting the use of the piano, you had to pay a fee. Over the years, not a single person's rented the piano or done with it, so we just like to take it off. Most everybody just asks about it, and nobody ever does anything. And that's all the changes. If we'd like to go out, it's all right if we go out, close this, and if I could just open up the non-class fees. Some of it's redundant, but that one down, yes. The only reason is because it does spell out similar. We do post these, so people will see this if we could scroll down. There is a laptop device program fee. We have the $25, so there's a few other. We put parking in after January 1st. That was new last year, so we're going to continue that. That's people that get a vehicle midway through the year and they don't want to pay the full price, so we're still. And you can see here is under extracurricular activities, the kids zone and the kids zone schedule, where that is a separate schedule. We're still working and finalizing those changes. There are changes for next year, but we will. This is allowing the superintendent or designee to be able to change those amounts as determined with at least 30-day advance notice. I will stand for any questions.
All right, Mrs. Connect, questions?
No questions, just comments. We have to support this because we don't have any funds within the district to cover the cost, so we have to put it back on our families. I've done quite a bit of reading recently on a book that talks specifically about the opportunity gap for children in America. And it highlights pay to play as the most powerful factor in limiting low-income kids' ability to have the experiences that enrich their academics and provide the opportunity to grow their soft skills that may help them reach the American dream more easily, even given the financial circumstances of their family. So I guess I approach this with a little bit of anger that you've heard me express before, that I think these are the opportunities that our state should fund for our kids. And the fact that they're not covered and that we have to turn to our families, some of whom will have their kids forego these phenomenal opportunities because they don't want to be embarrassed to ask for a waiver from their school. I think that's a tragedy, and I think that as leaders, we should do everything in our power to reverse this trend so that every kid in our state and every kid in this country is given the same opportunities to achieve and thrive. So I will support this, but with great sadness.
Mrs. Ceja Martinez?
No questions. I agree. I echo what you say. I definitely have the honor of participating in a lot of these events, and my kids do and the students do. So at this point, no comments. Thank you.
Mrs. Doan? Mr. Sandoval?
What are some of the ways or programs that we do have to subsidize, the pay-to-play or some students who can't afford it? I know we do have them, but if you wouldn't mind just speaking to those.
Madam President, members of the board, ways to subsidize. There's no subsidy, but every principal is discuss, every high school principal, at least I know we discuss, and with our athletic directors about if there's any evidence or any belief that there's an economic hardship that these fees would create, that the principal has authority to waive it. And so I do get lots of questions on this from schools, just the complexity of, well, what does it mean? What evidence do I need? What documentation? And there's no evidence. It's really just a memo that just to be made for a principal saying, I'm waiving it for this person.
Got it. Thank you.
And I'll just comment. I mean, we've lived this. My daughters have participated in extracurricular activities through their schools, and I know that my daughters have had teammates whose families sacrificed so that they could pay for what their students wanted to participate in, who their children should have participated in because they had gifts and talents and desires to do just that. And in many cases, those kids would go to school, would go to their practice, and then go to their job to pay for that. And that's a real heavy burden on a young person. And it's sad that that has to be.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hicks. I guess I was one of those young persons that didn't have the opportunity either, and I didn't turn out too bad. So some people do make it through. Thank you so much. All right, so need a motion and a second?
I move to pass the fee schedule.
Second.
All right, so voting item. Members, please cast your vote. Passes 5-0. Next item is item number 12. First reading of proposed changes to policy GCQC, resignation of professional staff members. Mr. Dr. Davidson.
Thank you, President Pingarelli, members of the board, and Dr. Stifler. Tonight I come to you with a proposal and the first reading of revised policy, GCQC, the resignation of professional staff members. Please note that the highlighted areas of change were put together not only by our executive council, but also through the association membership as well, and then bringing back tonight those possible changes to consider. So I'd like to highlight in the first section there, where we look at advancement to a position of higher pay, increased responsibility, and or at a level reasonably considered to be higher organizationally than the individual's previous position. And again, that was taking into account your comments from the last time we spoke about this policy. And then also putting in a piece towards the middle of the policy there, where we say that such waiver may be contingent upon the availability of a certified/administrative staff member who is qualified as a replacement. So I stand for further questions, or if you have any thoughts or opinions as well.
I'll go to Mr. Sandoval first.
Dr. Davidson, first off, thank you, for taking the time to take a look at this, I call it a policy. Clearly when you read it and look at some of the adaptations, it still addresses, the students, meaning, us not putting our students in a position that would negatively impact their learning and their success in school. In the same breath, I think it also really reflects the district's culture in regard to how we certainly value and respect our teacher, staff, and admin, meaning, that we value, they're wanting to grow and develop professionally. There's no doubt, we would love to keep, our teachers for 20 plus years, but there are some who, decide to take on a higher level position, whether it be at a university level or whatever that is. So, again, I've always said, when we take a look at the policy of this nature, it's one that, I definitely want to make sure that it's not one of a punitive one, but certainly one of, again, a reflection, on how we establish inspiring environments, for our associates, while not putting our students in a negative position from a learning perspective. So thank you.
So you like it?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay.
I think it was just input, right?
Mrs. Doan?
I don't know, I'm glad we can have this discussion about our policy, but I don't see a big need to change the policy that we already have in place. Our teachers are professionals. Any professional knows that they are held to their contract that they signed. Of course, I will go, I mean, you know, whatever the board's decision is on this, but I don't see any need to change current policy. Thank you.
Mrs. Connect?
Just to clarify, the sentence about advancement refers to advancement within or externally from the district, correct?
We left it vague in order to encompass either external or internal.
Okay. I believe this is an improvement.
Mrs. Ceja Martinez?
Thank you, and I truly appreciate the discussion about policy, and that's one of my main goals in this first year. And I am looking at every angle. One, as a colleague, and I know we spent a lot of time on this topic, but it is a morale crusher in our district. First, being a teacher and having a teacher leave and having to take on the students, that's a lot. You're putting a burden on, so I respect the contract and honoring that it's gonna affect our kids. The issue I have with this statement, we're giving a lot of authority to our administration to decide the increased responsibility. We have teachers that leave to be stay-at-home moms. They do a lot of work, and it may not be identified an advancement in a position, but to me, when parents leave to be stay-at-home parents, this statement bothers me on that level. The other place for the second part is such waiver may be contingent on availability of staff. Last I checked, even though we had a stellar report that we have roughly 95% returning.
92, but
92.
pretty darn good.
Yeah, phenomenal, thank you for that. We're still in a teacher shortage and an administrative shortage. So with that statement being said and the culture of the education world, it's a moot point to put that in there. At this point, I would say keep this policy as is, but reduce the fee. That's where I'm coming from. That fee is $2,500. Spent I made less money, I brought home less money my last year of teaching than my first year teaching. This is 4 times a teacher's salary. So, 2 months worth of salary. $2,500 is a lot. Now, when I left the district, this was a policy put in place, and it did what it was supposed to do. I waited my contract year. I finished, and I started a new job in June. So to protect our students, it's there. The problem I have is the amount, because we're talking about teachers who dedicate their lives to our students, to our community, our society, and that statement of advanced placement, it's too much authority, I think, on the administration part. Who are they to decide what's approved, what's not? So with that being said, I'm not comfortable going forward.
Dr. Davidson, just to be clear, I mean, this is written in a way that doesn't forego the liquidated damages if a teacher leaves mid-contract and puts us in just a horrible situation with the classroom, correct? I mean, when you take a look at the entire policy, so not just the change, but the entire policy is written in a way that we are still protecting our classrooms, our students, while creating, these, again, just very positive, work environments and creating this culture of, inspiration for our teachers and staff and admin.
The policy itself remains as it was, essentially with that same foundational piece. I believe the request for me to come back tonight was with some information that allowed for you all as a governing board to decide to not assess liquidated damages on people who were essentially growing professionally and yet still being able to serve as a positive role model out in society on behalf of Peoria and what the skills they grew in the kids that they positively impacted here. The other highlighted section was placed in there to allow you all, including the administrative team, what would you call it, a checks and balance of sorts, knowing that if there was a teacher still with an opportunity to grow, we still had liberty to say, wow, you're really negatively impacting the classroom through this choice. Let us help find a replacement prior to your departure, prior to us deciding not to assess liquidated damages.
Gotcha.
That was the intent of that statement.
Thank you.
Mrs. Pingerelli? I know that the policy was put in during your term, and it was to prevent teachers from leaving. And I had asked Dr. Stifler for some numbers, some data to look, is this policy effective? And at this time, I was informed that there's no such type of survey to identify if it's working or not. We still have teachers not in the classroom. We still have teachers who leave for all kinds of reasons. And then going forward, since the policy is in place, looking the amount, I've been asked by administrators and staff, as well as myself, my own curiosity is how much money are we bringing in, and how many times has the board overturned the policy?
President Pingerelli, Board Member Sayal Martinez, what I can tell you is I can just give you some raw data tonight from the 15-16 school year. We assessed liquidated damages on 19 individuals, certified, and administrators. And for the 15-16 school year, again, following current policy that's currently in place, we had 67 certified, which includes administrators, who are not assessed liquidated damages. To date, this was data taken as of February 23rd. We had assessed 14 certified, which includes administrators, and we had 45 teachers who met the policy and were not assessed liquidated damages. So, with that being said, from what I understand, our governing board has followed governing board policy. I do not believe that many one-offs were put in place.
Then that being said, Judy, I concur with you, then the policy should stay the same, and then we just look at the value going forward.
The value's not in the policy, is it? I don't see it.
No.
Excuse me?
The $2,500 is not in the policy.
No, ma'am, it is not.
It's in
Dr.
the
Stifler,
contract.
do you have a?
Ms. Pingerelli, it's in the contract. And so to look at that, unless I don't see a legal way to change that in everybody's contract right now.
They've
That
already
would be,
approved it.
that would be a year from
We'd
now
have to visit that contract.
to do that.
All right, well, let me give you my take on it. I just wanted to make sure that this is not, if we were to change, that this would not be retroactive, that it would, the people who were charged those fees would still be obligated for those.
I do not believe that this would be a retroactive policy. I do believe we have a few teachers and administrators that are still currently on hold that we would need to bring back with the policy change. Those are those individuals that were pulled off of the board report the last 2 months.
See, I take that as the retroactive ones. I take that, their contract, they broke it during that, they broke the current contract or the policy at that time. So I would not like to see the past that have been taken off being retroactive, and I would like to see that amount charged to them because the policy has not been changed yet. Also, in terms of the liquidated damages going forward, I agree with Mrs. Sehar Martinez. I know we talked about, when we talked about specialties, about insurance, copays. We had upped them to align with other districts.
Yes, ma'am.
So going forward, I don't mind looking at and lowering those fees or the liquidated damages from 2,500. But it still needs to have a sting in it. I mean, the reason that we have the contract is that we have a number of teachers and administrators and such. We can't have people breaking their contracts. And if we had no fees, there might be, like Mrs. Martinez would have left. We are representing PUSD. So in terms of your first line about advancement to a position of higher pay, I would only like to see that in district, not out of district. The stability should be for PUSD. If they're advancing to a position in PUSD, but if they're advancing to a position outside of PUSD, I think the liquidated damages still needs to take place. And that's my take on it. And I appreciate you coming back and going through this with us.
Certainly. And President Pingarelli, if I could just, per your comment there, just remind our board here that that is how our current policy states, is that it is for the internal promotions only.
Okay. I know we had pulled some that were external promotions.
So procedurally, where we are right here, this is listed as a first read. Conversation is absolutely appropriate with a first read. What I had planned with this, then it would come back a month from now for a second read. And either it passed or it failed to change with this exact wording that you see right here. Is the way policy gets changed. The issue on the liquidated damages that have been tabled, they have been collected. They have not been approved by the board. Okay, is technically where that's at. Is that correct,
yes,
Carter? We have collected that money. Okay, so what was possible by tabling it was to refund it to one or more people. That's certainly the board's criteria, and you wouldn't make that decision tonight because there's not an action item to do that. I'm just trying to explain where we are in this. So this is a recommendation at this point of change of policy. It's the first read, so everybody can stew on it. The community can also comment to the board and all of those sorts of things. It'll be read again in a month, and the board will take action. I will ensure that within the consent agenda, where those had been tabled, that there's an action item to handle, as you had said, Mrs. Pingarelli, for an up or down, because no, the board had not accepted those charges. Either the board accepts those charges on those that have been, where administration has put the charges in place on some or all of them, and that's what's been tabled there.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
So no action at this point, just, I'm sorry for how late it is in trying to explain that, but that's where we are in the process.
Thank you. Just a final comment. And again, Carter, Dr. Davidson, thank you. In light of, it's been brought up, our teacher shortages, et cetera. I know we have a high retention rate. But again, for me, it's never about putting our students in a negative situation. But the reason, for my wanting to take a look at this, it's also about, those teachers who are top performers, who leave within reason and get meaning, not putting our students in that tight spot, but then become a voice of the district, as they're out there in the community, driving, the teacher demand back into the district. So, one way, for us to, maybe make a small impact on, driving teachers into our district in light of teacher shortages. So, but thank you again. Appreciate it.
They can come work for the school board for free.
There we go.
Thank you very much. And thank you for clarifying that, Dr. Stifler.
Yes, ma'am.
Next item is item number 13, consideration of the cancellation of the May 25th, 2017 regular governing board meeting. Dr. Stifler?
Mrs. Pingarelli, members of the board, it's the administrative recommendation that the governing board meeting for May 25th be canceled because that's graduation. Here ended the recommendation.
Is there any questions, comments? Mrs.
Is
Connect?
there a plan to reschedule it or just cancel it?
The recommendation is to cancel it. There seems to be no time within May as graduation. There's the high school graduation that goes over several days. There's the elementary graduations, which go over several days before that. Board members and superintendent and staff are at those on all those evenings, and staff could not see a logical place to do that unless we followed up with the very next week from the first meeting in May.
I am concerned that these meetings where we do action items are very long, and
Ma'am.
they're a month apart, and then would be 2 months apart.
I believe the meeting that would be canceled is the study session meeting.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I feel better about it then.
Okay.
I move to cancel the meeting.
I'll
Mrs.
second.
Martinez, are we, any more comments?
I feel the same way, but according to the last study session, we did have voting items. So with that being said, I would meet every week.
Yes, ma'am. You've been clear.
I have talked with Dr. Stifler, and I believe that between myself and Mrs. Martinez, that we can fit everything in, even with canceling the May 25th.
Okay, good.
Any more comments? Okay, I guess we need a motion and a second.
I moved.
Okay, and you second?
Ended prematurely.
Okay. All right, this is an action item. Please cast your vote. It narrowly passes 5-0. Okay, next item is item 14, report and discussion on local, state, and federal legislative issues and activities. Dr. Stifler?
Mrs. Pingarelli, members of the board, the legislature is expected to have a budget around the 1st of May. The legislature has made it more difficult for citizens to pass initiatives, and the legislature has passed and the governor has signed a law to increase ESAs through the state that have also been capped. Here endeth the report.
Okay, thank you very much. That's about as short as I've ever heard you give the legislative update. Okay. All right, next item. Item number 15, request for agenda items for future governing board meetings. Mrs. Connect?
That was a very short explanation of those bills that will hurt us moving forward.
They were carefully selected, Mrs. Connect, but they were very brief. Yes, ma'am.
With that, I have a related. I'm going to give to Dr. Stifler a suggested resolution from the Arizona School Boards Association that school boards may vote to enact or to resolve their opposition of expansion of education savings accounts. So if you will please share this with my colleagues, and if I can get a second, we can consider this in public and perhaps resolve to oppose that.
I second.
That law that takes money away from our public schools. Okay. And the other thing that I think we need to reconsider is we've gotten quite a bit of feedback on the conference problem. I would like to revisit that, please. Anyone else want to talk about that? There's the calendar issue, in that there's only a half day.
Oh, right,
for
right,
calendar.
parent-teacher conferences, yes. I'll
Pingarelli?
second that.
Yeah.
You're seconding that?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
basically.
Two items.
Do you want on the calendar? I got on the resolution, that would be for board vote. Do you want the calendar as an action item with the board? Do you want that as a report? How do you want that? We're working on that with staff. I believe we're on our path to get that resolved. But how would you like board clearly said, how would you like?
We will need to, if there are changes to be made, we will need to approve a new calendar. And for us to give you our input on that, I guess we could all give that to him on our own, separately. How would you like to receive our feedback, sir?
I'd like to receive your feedback individually as quickly as I can, so that as we're working with staff, I think we're very close to a solution.
Okay.
We're working with the teachers' associations, and I think we're very, very close, if not all the way there.
Then I think that perhaps it could be agendized at the next meeting for a revised calendar approval.
Yes, ma'am.
Is anyone else in favor of that?
It's already been voted on. So I need to look at the protocol for being able to readdress something for which a decision has already been made.
Well, those of us somebody who has been on the prevailing side can move to revisit that.
There is a policy. I found it.
We all prevailed on that, so,
There was two.
yeah.
Brought forward by Mrs. Connect, and it was seconded
Okay.
by Mrs.
Mrs. Sejar Martinez?
Thank you.
Okay. First, Mr. Hicks brought the policy in one of his presentations, and I do appreciate that. With that being said, I would like to discuss, I know I shared with Dr. Stifler, but he said I had to bring it to the board, of having policies addressed with every action item on an agenda. So anytime we discuss something, I would like the policy to be included at the agenda. Does that make sense?
Well, I will second that.
You mean so we get to talk about policy regarding the,
No, so if
It's an
there,
information item.
yes. Like, if there's an agenda item that we're talking about, that within the agenda, there's a link to the policy, just so that I could review, or any governing board
Oh.
member could just review it when making our scope of decision.
Okay.
Decision-making.
Makes it a little easier.
Yeah, not to discuss the policy, but just to have easy access.
There's a related policy to an
Yes, perfect, thank you. I would like to have a report on or discuss creating a new onboarding process associated with PUSD only. I know that ASBA has their own new board orientation.
For governing board members.
For governing board members only, once elected in PUSD or appointed PUSD, that we create a program for the onboarding process. Mr. Savoy brought up the onboarding process for those new students, also looking at it across the district for all new kids, so that we can acclimate them to our culture, and the parents. Communication, especially the feedback we're getting, sending out the agenda items via email blast to all the parents so that they know it's what we're discussing. And that's it.
Mrs. Doan? Oh, do you have
First,
questions on
I
that?
need some help. I need some direction there. Those
Okay.
were at least
So-
3 requests. So one was a request to develop a PUSD-specific onboarding, formal onboarding process for new school board members.
For PUSD, yes, one.
And so, and I appreciate you following protocol here so much, and so that would, I'm looking for if someone else, another board member says,
the second?
Doan?
Okay, I'll second it.
there we go, so we'll work that up. The second one,
And I think if you look in the backlogs, we may have even had something before in the past.
yes, ma'am, I'll dig, look for every
Way
resource I
back.
can.
Like way back.
Okay. The second one, I might have got lost. It was, you were giving Mr. Savoy a compliment, and I got lost right after that.
A report or creating a discussion about, or action on onboarding all students. Acclimating kids to our culture.
So,
Ambassador program,
okay,
there we go.
I understand the request now.
Sorry.
You mean like students that are coming in from other schools?
Yeah, anytime there's new people in a school, what's our ambassador program look like? Do we have one? we discussed it for a situation that we're dealing with, but do we have one? Can I get a report on that? There we go.
It will vary by school, but I'm waiting for someone to say, yes, Ben, to second that, please.
So is that something that's discussed at the,
I'll work to get you the information, but the formality of that, every school, we have 42 schools, they all have a different program, they're not all the same. If that's the highest priority that the board wants to put on administration right now, I so respect one board member asking, but I
Okay.
need at least two to ask before I assign staff to spend time on
and
that.
that's fine, I can wait. This would be a great opportunity to highlight an onboarding process.
I hear that. Yes, ma'am. And the third request you had?
Was, and now that I got that clarification, I'll just send out an email to you.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Stone, do you have anything?
I do not.
Okay, Mr. Sandoval?
I don't, but I have just a clarifying question around adding new agenda items as far as its protocol. So is there a governance around when these requested agenda items should be expected to be on a future agenda?
That is prioritized by myself, Mrs. Sehar Martinez, and Dr. Stifler. And we go through which ones we have and prioritize when to put them on. So it would be between the three of us.
Gotcha. So no timing on it, just, got it.
All right. So next agenda item?
I'm sorry, let's go back to that, to Mr. Sandoval's question. Forgive me if I'm not paying attention to the future agenda that's
Right.
in our packet, but in the past, we've had items that have been requested with prospective dates.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that still in there?
That's still possible to request a date sooner rather than later. I'm still going to ask, are you asking, like, is this everything right now, or is this down the road?
We had a rotating list, so if the issue was, two of us had said, we want to talk about painting the buildings pink.
Right.
Maybe it didn't make the next meeting or the meeting after that, but we could look on the list and say that it is a pending item that will be scheduled at some point. And so we could say, you know what, I think it's more important than 4 meetings from now, we want to move it up.
That list still exists.
Are
So
we seeing
that
it?
could be brought forward
Yes,
on a regular basis.
it used to be included with the next agenda,
Yes, ma'am, it could be.
and also, then it was included as a running list with it. I would appreciate that as well.
That we can do.
Since we're talking about agendas, and we changed the study session, can we revert back to this? Is that a discussion that we have?
That's not agended for discussion tonight.
Okay, but do we need to add it to the agenda item, or is it something we just decide?
We think we added that to the future agenda items last
We
meeting.
voted on it.
That was one thing that was on the agenda, and I actually had it pulled on Monday, knowing that this was a very long meeting tonight.
So it is-
Right now, we have, to speed things up, the first board meeting of the month is action items. The second, we have had action items just to keep things going, because things have been getting quite long. So if the board would like to discuss that right now, like I said, I did pull it. I would like to have the second meeting.
Well, we can't talk about
Well, that's true, we can't talk about. So if the board, if somebody wants to put that on a future agenda item, to discuss it.
Well, I thought it was.
Well, yeah, I did pull it, so I can place it at high priority on the next agenda.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Next agenda item is the consent agenda. Would any board member like to have any item pulled from the consent agenda? Nope. Okay, then
Pingarelli, I
yes.
move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All right, this is an action item. Members, please cast your vote. Passes 5-0. All right, next agenda item is informational reports, budget, facilities, planning, and construction. Just peruse through it really quick. Thank you very much. Next item, district budget report for the month of February 2017. Thank you. Next is 28, district enrollment report for excuse me, for February 2017.
Just a reminder to the public, because we're going kind of fast, this is all on the website, and you can peruse it
At your leisure.
at your leisure, that's right.
Thank you. Next item is item 29. Report on upcoming meetings and events. I'm sorry, I'm going faster than. And on this one, I asked Ms. Aries to supply the board with a copy of this item with some highlighted. I've had some changes in my work schedule. I am not able to attend a lot of these events. However, one of them I'm not going to be here on, which I really sorely miss, the Pride of Peoria recognition event. On this one, I had asked Mrs. Ceja Martinez to fill in for me. So I kind of, but for all the other highlighted ones, Ms. Aries needs to have somebody, a board member that will be there to give a speech or talk. And I just wanted to have some volunteers.
I looked at the highlights, I didn't know what they were for, but I looked them up, and I can go to the transitional high school, what do we call it?
Flex?
The Flex Academy, I know, we changed the name, it used to be PTC, right?
There was a couple things that Mrs. Yeah, there's
At
a couple things that,
graduation.
yeah, there's a couple things that Ms.
Oh,
Aries
okay.
had highlighted that actually I should have taken off. One is the Peoria Flex Academy. I am the one that gets to go.
Okay, good.
But you
that's
could go
fine.
too, but right now. And then the high school graduations, I think, have all been accounted for in all the promotions. So on that, I guess we don't need anything. But we would for May 9th, the Peoria Education Foundation's annual grants and scholarships receptions. And then April 25th, the volunteer appreciation event at Marshall Ranch Elementary School.
I'll be at both of those events.
I have the April 25th on my calendar.
Same here.
So,
Pride in Peoria.
Ms. Aries, you have 2 or 3 board members, at least at those two. Or I'm not sure how we worked it in the past, if one board member spoke, if all 3, but one, then you're welcome to get together with those board members, and they're all 3 going to be there, so who would like to speak? Let's just get it over with right now.
So the 3 events, the April 25th, May 1st, and May 9th?
The May 1st is, I had already volunteered you.
Perfect.
So
I'll take that one.
So I guess there's 2 others, and I guess Mrs. Connect and Mr. Sandoval, do you have a preference over the volunteer appreciation or the Peoria Education Foundation's annual grants?
Ex officio board member of the Peoria Education Foundation, so that's a logical fit for me.
Perfect for you.
Okay.
Then, Mr. Sandoval, would you be able to take the volunteer appreciation event?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Ms. Aries, do you have that? Thank you so much. And thank you very much for filling in. Appreciate it. All right. Where are we at? Item number 30. is the draft agenda for April 27, 2017 regular board meeting. And on this one, I just wanted to say that I will not be at this particular board meeting, and Mrs. Sehar Martinez will be filling in at that time. And it looks like there will be study sessions on regarding equity, which I know Mr. Sandoval had asked for, and also regarding student discipline, which you've asked for too. So those will be covered on that board meeting.
Those will have to be, I believe.
Actually, you know what that is?
Those will have to be introductory kind of discussions.
Okay.
Because real estate and budget is going to take
Quite a bit.
quite a bit of time.
Okay,
Have an action items.
okay.
Yeah.
That is April 27th, was it?
Yeah. I don't recall those as my items, but they seem interesting.
I thought you had, okay.
The equity one? I thought
Yeah,
was,
I mean, equity for
Or
sure,
was that-
and I think Monica's certainly in that. I think the two that I have are the,
MOU.
That was scheduled for May, tentatively scheduled for May. Mrs. Doan, quite a while ago, had asked about restorative discipline.
I agree, and that's
Sorry.
important, and actually, that can be part of the equity conversation.
That's why they were put together
Very good.
that way. But the budget and the real estate, this is also the time for the budget piece and the real estate piece will impede on pure study session. And it's anticipated that the board will have conversations around budget, so that budget and study session actually do go together. It's late, I'm sorry, I'm not
And there
explaining
is
myself right.
on the equity thing, so that we're not reinventing the wheel, there is a format
Yes, ma'am,
for the equity challenge that
Right.
asks us to look at some specific areas, so.
right. And I have, yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Next item is item 31. Board member opportunity to readdress agenda items. No, 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 no.
Mrs. Fingarelli,
Yes,
may I,
you're welcome to.
in the consent agenda? Carter, would you make an introduction for me, please? Yes, you do. You've already approved this, and if it we would have done this at any rate, Carter, just,
All right, thank you, Dr. Stifler, President Pingarelli, members of the board. It's with great pleasure tonight, and thank you again for approving the consent agenda. But we do have a special guest over to my right here, and that's Miss Laura Vesley. Laura is going to be transitioning at the beginning of the new contract and school year, July 1, to Director of Human Resources. So she'll be joining my team as Miss Lewis is going to be moving back to Florida. So Laura, welcome, and thank you for hanging out with us this evening.
everybody's here.
Thank you.
Ms. Fingarelli, thank you for that opportunity to redirect.
No, thank you, and thank you for sticking around. Sorry that you waited for 4 hours. Welcome. Okay, with that said, then, my favorite one this evening is 32, consideration of adjournment. And I will need a motion and a second.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
All right. Have a motion and a second. Members, please cast your vote. All right, passes 5-0. Thank you very much, and thank you for everybody that stuck around.
Oh, God. Are you tired, baby?